My name is Kimberly, and this is my story. I grew up in a small town, went to the local high school, and that's where I met Jason. He was this tall, charming guy, always the center of attention. We were both just teenagers, but it felt like love at first sight. We started dating, and before we knew it, we were inseparable. We got married when we were just 20. Looking back, we were too young and naive, but at the time, it seemed like the perfect fairy tale. Jason was always the fun-loving, carefree type. He had big dreams and a bigger personality. I was more grounded, focused on building a stable future. We balanced each other out, or so I thought. Not long after we got married, I found out I was pregnant with our daughter, Lily. It was a surprise, but a welcome one. Jason was over the moon, and for a while, it felt like we were on top of the world. We were this young couple, excited about starting a family and building a life together. But as time went on, cracks started to show. Jason's carefree attitude started to feel more like irresponsibility. He was always chasing the next big thing, never satisfied with what he had. Meanwhile, I was working hard, trying to keep everything together for Lily's sake. I could see he loved her, but he was more interested in his own adventures than in being a responsible father. One evening, after putting Lily to bed, I sat down with Jason in the living room. I needed to talk to him about his spending habits and lack of focus. It was a conversation I had been dreading, but it had to be done. "Jason, we need to talk," I started, trying to keep my voice calm. "What's up, Kim?" he asked, not taking his eyes off the TV. "I'm worried about how we're handling things," I said. "We need to be more responsible, especially with Lily in the picture now." Jason shook his head. "You're always worrying about the future. Why can't we just enjoy the present?" "Because the present is a mess, Jason," I shouted back. "We're barely making ends meet, and you're out there buying new gadgets and talking about trips we can't afford." A few weeks later, after another argument about his latest impulse buy, I made the decision to end our marriage. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the right thing for Lily and me. I wanted her to have a stable, predictable life, not one filled with uncertainty and broken promises. The next few weeks were tough. Jason moved out, and I started the process of filing for divorce. He wasn't happy about it, but he eventually agreed to joint custody and to pay child support. It wasn't easy, but I felt a sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Raising Lily on my own was challenging, but it was also rewarding. She was my world, and I was determined to give her the best life possible. I found a job that allowed me to provide for us, and slowly, we settled into our new routine. Over time, Jason and I found a way to be civil with each other. He would visit Lily occasionally, and he always made sure to send the child support on time. For that, I was grateful. It wasn't the life I had imagined when we first got married, but it was a life that worked for us. Lily had just turned 18, and we were celebrating her acceptance into law school. It was a big deal for both of us. She'd worked so hard, and I was incredibly proud. I decided to have a special dinner to mark the occasion, and for the first time in a long while, I invited Jason, her father, to join us. When I called him, he sounded genuinely pleased to be invited. "Hey, Jason, it's Kimberly. I'm planning a dinner for Lily. She got into law school, and I thought it'd be nice if you came," I said, trying to keep it casual. "Kimberly, that's great news. I'll be there," he said, and we hung up. The night of the dinner, I was a bundle of nerves. I wanted everything to be perfect for Lily. I'd prepared her favorite dishes and set the table nicely. When Jason arrived, he looked surprisingly good, dressed in a crisp shirt and slacks, carrying a small gift. Lily came down the stairs, beaming when she saw her dad. "Dad, you made it." "Of course, I wouldn't miss it for the world," Jason said, hugging her tightly. "And I brought you a little something." Lily tore open the wrapping to find a brand new smartphone. "Wow, Dad, this is amazing. Thank you," she exclaimed, her face lighting up. We sat down to dinner, and the conversation flowed easily. Jason talked about his new job and his big house. He seemed to be doing well, and I was glad for Lily's sake. "So, Kimberly, you haven't changed a bit," Jason said, looking at me across the table. I smiled awkwardly. "Thanks, Jason. You seem to be doing well." "Yeah, things are good. Got a great job, nice house, life's treating me well," he replied, clearly proud of himself. After dinner, Lily announced she was going out to celebrate with her friends. "Thanks for the dinner, Mom. And Dad, the phone is awesome. I'll see you both later," she said, giving us both hugs before dashing out the door. Jason and I were left alone, the house suddenly feeling very quiet. I started clearing the table, and he stood up to help. We worked in silence for a while, the familiar routine of washing and drying dishes bringing back memories of our life together. After a while, Jason broke the silence. "Kimberly, I've been thinking a lot lately," he said, his tone serious. "About what?" I asked, not looking up from the sink. "About us. About Lily. About everything, really," he said, setting down the dish he was drying. "I miss what we had. I miss you. I want to try again." I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of emotions. "Jason, we have a lot of history, and not all of it's good." "Why now?" "Because I've realized what I lost. I want to be a better man for you, for Lily," he said, his voice earnest. I hesitated, my mind racing with memories of our past and thoughts of what the future might hold. "All right, Jason. Let's take it slow, see where it goes." A smile spread across his face. "Thank you, Kimberly. You won't regret this." We finished the dishes in a comfortable silence, both of us lost in our thoughts. It felt strange, but also a little exciting, the possibility of starting over. As the night went on, we talked more, sharing stories and laughing about old times. Getting back with Jason was a big decision, but I decided to give it a try. We got married again, just a simple ceremony at the city hall. Only Lily and Jason's older sister, Margaret, were there. It was a small, quiet event, nothing fancy. I hoped this time things would be different. Moving into Jason's big house felt strange at first. It was so different from my small, cozy place. The house was huge, with lots of rooms and big windows. Jason seemed happy to have me there, and for a while, things felt good. I started decorating, trying to make the place feel like home. Lily came home for a visit a few days later. She was thrilled to see us together again. We sat in the living room, catching up on her life at college. "So, how's law school treating you?" Jason asked, looking proud. "It's tough, but I love it. I'm learning so much," Lily replied, her eyes shining with excitement. "I'm glad to hear that, kiddo. You're gonna be a great lawyer," Jason said, patting her shoulder. "Thanks, Dad. It's good to see you both together again," Lily said, looking at us with a smile. After Lily left, Jason and I sat on the couch, talking about our plans. We talked about traveling, maybe taking a trip to the mountains. It felt good to plan things together again. But as time went on, I noticed Jason wasn't putting money into our joint account. I asked him about it one night while we were having dinner. "Jason, I've noticed you haven't been putting money into our account. What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. He looked up from his plate, looking a bit annoyed. "I've had some money problems, Kimberly. I'm working on it." "Money problems? You didn't mention anything about that before. What's going on?" I pressed, feeling a bit uneasy. "I didn't want to worry you. It's nothing big, just a few things I need to sort out," he said, looking away. As the months went by, I noticed Jason buying new gadgets and posting pictures of expensive cars on social media. It started to bother me, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I hoped he would get his act together. One day, I was cleaning the house when I found a receipt for a luxury car rental in Jason's jacket pocket. I felt my heart sink. I decided to confront him about it that evening. "Jason, can we talk?" I said, holding up the receipt when he walked in. "What's this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at the receipt and then back at me. "It's just a rental, Kimberly. No big deal." "No big deal? Jason, we're supposed to be saving money, not spending it on luxury cars," I said, feeling my frustration rising. "I work hard, Kimberly. I deserve to enjoy my money," he replied, his tone defensive. "I get that, but we need to be smart about this. We have bills to pay," I said, trying to keep calm. "I'm handling it, okay? You don't need to worry about it," he said, brushing me off. As the days went on, I noticed more signs of Jason's spending. New gadgets, fancy clothes, and more car rentals. I tried talking to him about it, but he always brushed me off, saying he had it under control. For 2 years, I tried to talk to Jason about saving money and managing our budget better. He never listened. Every time I brought it up, he'd brush me off, saying he had everything under control. But he didn't. Our bank account was always running low, and he kept buying new gadgets and renting flashy cars. He posted videos of himself with these expensive toys on social media, making everyone think we were living the high life. Friends would comment on how lucky I was, but they had no idea how hard it was to keep everything together. Jason's spending was getting out of hand. I couldn't ignore it any longer. Our joint account was barely enough to cover bills, and he was flaunting new gadgets and expensive clothes. I decided to confront him seriously this time. "Jason, we need to talk," I said, walking into the living room where he was lounging with his tablet. "Can't it wait, Kimberly? I'm in the middle of something," he replied, not looking up. "No, it can't wait. This is important," I said, my voice firm. "I found another receipt for a luxury car rental. We can't keep doing this, Jason. We're running out of money. We're barely getting by, and you're spending like we're millionaires." "I work hard, Kimberly. I deserve to treat myself," he said, looking annoyed. "Treating yourself is one thing, but this is out of control. We're drowning here," I replied, feeling my frustration rise. "Stop exaggerating. We're fine. I've got it covered," he said, dismissing my concerns. "No, Jason, you don't. You're acting like a spoiled kid, not a responsible adult," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. He got up, glaring at me. "I don't need a lecture from you, Kimberly. I know what I'm doing." He stormed out of the room, leaving me standing there, shaking with anger. I couldn't keep doing this. Something had to change. I kept hoping Jason would change, that he'd finally see reason and start acting more responsibly. But it only got worse. Each month, I'd find more receipts for gadgets and rentals. I felt like I was drowning, trying to make ends meet, while he spent money like it was going out of style. It was like he hadn't changed at all since our first breakup. The man I hoped had grown up was still the same carefree guy who didn't think about tomorrow. One day, I got a call from my brother. Our mother had died. She lived in the same city where Lily was studying. The news hit me hard. I told Jason, and we decided to take the train to say goodbye. It was a long, silent journey. I was lost in my thoughts, trying to process the loss. When we arrived, Lily was there to meet us. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. We hugged tightly, finding some comfort in being together. The farewell was modest, just close family. My brother and I did what needed to be done without any fuss or luxury. It was what Mom would have wanted. During the service, I looked around and realized Jason wasn't there. I felt a pang of worry and turned to Lily. "Have you seen your father?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She shook her head, looking just as confused. "No, Mom. I haven't seen him since we got here." I felt a knot in my stomach, a mix of worry and frustration. This was typical of Jason, disappearing when I needed him most. But I pushed those feelings aside, focusing on saying goodbye to my mother. Jason came up to me only after the ceremony was over. I was very tired, so I didn't ask him where he had been all this time. After the funeral, we gathered at my mother's house for the will reading. It was just me, my brother Tom, Lily, Jason, and a few close relatives. The lawyer, Mr. Harris, a longtime family friend, opened the envelope and pulled out a few sheets of paper. To my daughter, Kimberly, I leave the house and all its contents, Mr. Harris read aloud. To my son, Tom, I leave my savings and any remaining assets. I felt a lump in my throat. The house was a big responsibility, but I was grateful. It was full of memories, a place where I could still feel my mother's presence. I looked over at Tom, who was nodding, seemingly okay with the arrangement. Suddenly, Jason, who had been silent until now, stood up. "We need to sell the house. It's too much for Kimberly to handle on her own," he said, his tone more demanding than concerned. I stared at him, shocked. "Jason, what are you talking about? We just heard the will. The house is mine." "Exactly. It's your house, so we should sell it and split the money," Jason insisted, his face flushed with frustration. "No way, Dad," Lily interjected, her voice firm. "I lived here with Grandma while I was in college. I plan to keep living here." Jason waved her off. "Lily, this is between the adults. Kimberly, we need to be practical about this." "Practical? You're talking about selling my mother's house like it's just another asset," I said, feeling my anger rising. "It is an asset, Kimberly. And as your husband, I have a say in what happens with it," Jason shot back, crossing his arms. Lily stood up, glaring at her father. "Dad, I'm studying law, remember? Inherited property isn't shared between spouses. You don't get a say in this." Jason's face turned red with anger. "Don't talk to me like that, young lady. This is a family decision, and I'm part of this family." Then he turned to me. "If you don't sell the house, I'll divorce you." The room fell silent. All eyes were on us. I could see the shock and confusion on my relatives' faces. I took a step back, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. "Fine, Jason. We'll talk about it when we get home," I said, my voice cold and steady. We left early the next morning, taking the train back home. Jason was quiet the whole way, his anger simmering just below the surface. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through social media to distract myself. That's when I saw it, a video Jason had posted. In the video, he was standing in front of a lavish funeral setup, talking about how close he was to my mother and how much he was suffering. The comments were filled with sympathy, and the video had over 1 million views. I felt a wave of anger and disbelief. He wasn't at my mother's funeral because he was at another funeral across the cemetery, filming himself against the background of the coffin of a rich businessman. I couldn't believe how hypocritical and deceitful he was. Without looking up, I said, "Jason, you're in for a surprise when we get home." He looked at me, a smug smile on his face. "So, you've decided to sell? Good. We'll make a nice chunk of change. I'm thinking of getting a new car with the money." I just shook my head, sadly, not saying another word. The train ride felt endless, my mind racing with anger and disappointment. When we got back to Jason's house, there was a surprise waiting for him, his older sister, Margaret, sitting at the dining table. I had called her in advance and asked her to come over for this conversation. The moment Jason saw her, he froze, his confident demeanor vanished. "Margaret, what are you doing here?" Jason asked, his voice trembling a bit. Margaret looked at him sternly. "I'm here because Kimberly called me. We need to have a serious talk, Jason. Sit down." Jason hesitated, then slowly walked over and sat down across from her, looking nervous. I could see the fear in his eyes. I took a deep breath, ready to lay everything out on the table. "Margaret, I need to tell you what's been going on," I began, my voice steady. "Jason has been spending excessively on gadgets and car rentals. He's been demanding that I sell my mother's house and even threatened me with divorce if I didn't agree." Margaret's eyes narrowed as she turned to Jason. "Is this true, Jason?" Jason looked down, not meeting her gaze. It's not as bad as she's making it sound, Margaret. Not as bad? I snapped. You've been wasting money left and right and trying to bully me into selling my mother's house. That's pretty bad, Jason. Margaret shook her head, disappointment etched on her face. Jason, you haven't grown up at all. You're still acting like a child. You've never achieved anything on your own. Jason looked up, a mix of anger and shame on his face. That's not fair, Margaret. I've tried my best. Your best? Margaret scoffed. The house you're living in isn't even yours. It's mine. I let you live here because I felt sorry for you. And now I find out you've been wasting money and bullying Kimberly? Jason's face turned pale. Margaret, I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. Out of hand? Margaret repeated, her voice cold. You've been living off my generosity and trying to push Kimberly around. And do you know what else? I've been paying Lily's child support, not you. You couldn't even be bothered to take care of your own daughter. You should be grateful to God for having a wife like Kimberly. You don't deserve her. I felt tears welling up in my eyes at Margaret's words. I turned to Jason, my voice trembling with emotion. Jason, the house should go to Lily. She's an adult now, and it's her legacy. Jason suddenly jumped up, his face red with anger. I don't give a damn about Lily. I want half the money from the sale of that house, or else I want a divorce. The room fell silent. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. You don't care about your own daughter? Fine, Jason. I reached into my bag and pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared earlier. I handed them to him, my hands shaking. Here are the divorce papers. Sign them. Jason's hands trembled as he reluctantly signed the papers. You're making a big mistake, Kimberly. No, Jason. The mistake was thinking you'd ever change, I said, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over me. Jason finished signing and then bolted out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, feeling a mix of exhaustion and liberation. Margaret walked over to me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Kimberly, thank you for everything you've done for my brother. And you've got Lily. You'll get through this. After the divorce, I packed up and moved back to the city where I grew up. It felt good to be back in my mother's house, surrounded by familiar memories. The house needed some work, but it was home. It was a place where I could start fresh. Lily graduated from college not long after. She married a wonderful guy, and now she's expecting a baby. I'm excited to become a grandmother. Life was starting to feel settled and peaceful, something I hadn't felt in a long time. One afternoon, I was in the garden, pulling weeds, when my phone rang. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered it, seeing Jason's name on the screen. Hello? I said, already feeling a knot in my stomach. Kimberly, it's Jason. I need to talk to you, he said, his voice sounding desperate. What do you want, Jason? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm in big trouble, Kimberly. I've got debts piling up, and I need your help, he blurted out. No, Jason. I'm not giving you any money, I said firmly. But Kimberly, I need you. We could try again, you know, make things right this time, he said, his voice almost begging. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want to get married again? Are you out of your mind? Come on, Kimberly. We had good times too. We can start over, he said, trying to sound convincing. Jason, we're done. I've moved on, and you need to do the same. I'm not marrying you again, and I'm definitely not giving you money, I said, feeling my anger rise. He sighed heavily on the other end of the line. I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd want to help me. I've helped you enough, Jason. It's time you stand on your own 2 feet, I replied, my voice cold. Fine, Kimberly. I see how it is, he said, his voice turning bitter. Goodbye, Jason, I said, and hung up the phone. I stood there for a moment, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. I had finally closed that chapter of my life for good. Jason's problems were no longer my problems, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I went back to my gardening, feeling more at peace than I had in years. I was ready to focus on my future, on my daughter, and on the new grandchild that was on the way. I was done looking back. It was time to embrace the life ahead of me, with all its possibilities.
Life has a funny way of flipping the script when you least expect it. I'm Ella, an economist by profession, and if you'd asked me a few years back, I would have said I had it all. A loving husband, Mark, a darling daughter, Lily, and a cozy home that was all ours. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let me take you back to where it all began, to the days filled with hope and plans for the future. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sun lazily peeks through the curtains, and the smell of fresh bread from Mark's bakery fills the air. Mark was in the kitchen, his hands covered in flour, a look of concentration on his face that always made me smile. "Hey, Ella, can you grab the vanilla extract?" "It's on the top shelf," Mark called out, not looking up from his mixing bowl. I walked over to the pantry, reaching for the small bottle. "You know, you could put things where I can reach them," I teased, handing him the extract. Mark grinned, wiping his hands on his apron. "Where's the fun in that? I like it when you have to stretch." I rolled my eyes playfully. "You're impossible, you know that." "That's why you married me," he quipped, turning back to his dough. Lily, our 6-year-old, was sprawled on the living room floor, her coloring books spread around her. She was humming a tune, completely engrossed in her artwork. "Mommy, look! I'm drawing a picture of our family," she said, waving me over. "That's fantastic, Lily. Speaking of the bakery, Mark, have you thought about what we discussed? About maybe expanding?" I asked, a bit hesitant. Mark's expression changed slightly, a frown forming on his forehead. "Ella, we've been over this. The bakery is doing just fine as it is. Why mess with a good thing? But we could do so much more, you know, for Lily's future and maybe even get that house we've been dreaming about," I pressed on. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Ella. I like the bakery the way it is. Small, manageable. I don't want the headache of a bigger place." I felt a twinge of frustration but decided not to push it. Okay. I just think we should think bigger, that's all." Mark shrugged, a hint of irritation in his voice. "Maybe. Let's just enjoy today, okay? No more talk about expanding." I nodded, not wanting to ruin the day. "Sure, Mark. Let's enjoy our Sunday." As the day wound down, I couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. Mark and I had always been a team, dreaming and planning together. But lately, it felt like we were on different pages, especially when it came to ambition and our future. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the once lighthearted banter between Mark and me began to lose its charm. The bakery, once a symbol of our shared dreams, had become a stagnant reminder of what could have been but wasn't. I was busy climbing the ladder at my company, while Mark seemed content with the status quo. That's when the first cracks started to show. One evening, I came home from a particularly grueling day at work, my mind swirling with numbers and projections. Mark was in the living room, feet propped up, scrolling through his phone. The bakery had closed early, and he hadn't bothered to pick up Lily from school. My mother had stepped in, as she often did these days. "Mark, you were supposed to pick up Lily today. I had a meeting, and I couldn't make it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Mark didn't look up. "Oh, was that today? I forgot. Sorry." "Forgot? Mark, this is becoming a habit. You need to step up," I said, frustration creeping into my tone. Mark finally looked up, annoyance flashing in his eyes. I said, "I'm sorry, Ella. What more do you want? I'm not the only parent here." That stung. I took a deep breath, trying to rein in my temper. "It's not just about picking up Lily, Mark. It's about us, about our future. Don't you think we should be doing more? For her, for us." Mark shrugged, an indifferent expression on his face. We're doing fine, Ella. Why are you always pushing for more? Can't you just be happy with what we have? I sat down, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I am happy, Mark. But I also want more for our daughter, for our family. Is that so wrong? Mark stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You know what, Ella? I'm tired of this. Every day, the same lecture about wanting more. I'm going to my mom's. And just like that, he grabbed his keys and left, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a growing sense of dread. This wasn't the first time he'd run to his mother, Susan, whenever we had a disagreement. It was becoming his go-to move, and I was left to wonder where I stood in this marriage. The next day, I received a call from Susan, and her tone was anything but friendly. Ella, what's this I hear about you and Mark fighting again? You're pushing him too hard. He's happy with his bakery, why can't you be? Susan's voice was sharp, accusatory. I clenched the phone tighter, trying to remain calm. Susan, I'm just thinking about our future, about Lily's future. Mark and I need to be on the same page. Well, maybe your page is the problem, Ella. You're always wanting more. Mark is a simple man, and you knew that when you married him, Susan retorted. I felt a flash of anger. Simple doesn't mean stagnant, Susan. I'm trying to build a better future for all of us. Susan scoffed. You're just being ungrateful and greedy. Mark is doing his best. You should appreciate that. The conversation ended shortly after, with no resolution in sight. I hung up, feeling more alone than ever. Trouble hit like a freight train, and it hit hard. Mark's Bakery, once the center of our small community, started to lose its charm and customers. Bills piled up, and the once cozy bakery felt more like a sinking ship. I was pulling extra hours at work, trying to keep us afloat, but it felt like bailing water out of a boat with a hole in it. One evening, I came home to find Mark slumped at the kitchen table, a stack of bills in front of him. His face was a picture of defeat. Mark, what's going on? I asked, a sinking feeling in my stomach. He looked up, his eyes tired and red. The bakery, Ella. I can't keep it running anymore. We're bleeding money. My heart sank. What are we going to do? We have Lily to think about. Mark ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd become all too familiar with. I don't know, Ella. I really don't. I never thought it would come to this. I sat down beside him, trying to process the news. Well, maybe it's time to consider other options. You could look for a job, at least until we figure things out. Mark's expression hardened. A job? What? And work for someone else? I'm a business owner, Ella, not some office drone. I tried to keep my voice calm. Mark, this isn't about pride. It's about our family, about making ends meet. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I don't need a lecture, Ella. I know what's at stake. And with that, he stormed out of the room, leaving me with a pile of unpaid bills and a head full of worries. The next day, I decided to talk to Susan, hoping she might be able to get through to Mark. I dialed her number, my hands shaking slightly. Susan, it's about the bakery. Mark's really struggling, and I think he needs to consider looking for a job, I said, trying to sound diplomatic. A job? My son is not going to work for someone else. He's a business owner, Ella. He's better than that, Susan snapped. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my frustration in check. Susan, the bakery is closing. We have bills to pay, a daughter to raise. This isn't about being better than anything. It's about survival. Susan scoffed. Survival? You always exaggerate, Ella. Mark will figure it out. He doesn't need to stoop to being an employee. The conversation went nowhere, and I hung up feeling more helpless than ever. Mark's refusal to face reality, combined with Susan's delusional support, was a recipe for disaster. That night, Mark and I sat in silence, the tension between us thick enough to cut with a knife. I wanted to scream, to shout, to shake some sense into him, but I knew it would be pointless. The closure of the bakery brought more than just financial strain, it tore at the very fabric of our family life. Mark, once a bustling business owner, now spent his days idly lounging around the house. I'd come home exhausted from work, only to find dishes piled in the sink, laundry undone, and Lily left to her own devices. One evening, I arrived home later than usual, my head throbbing from a day crammed with meetings. The house was in disarray, and the sight of Mark on the couch, beer in hand, watching TV, was the last straw. "Mark, what the hell? Look at this place. Can't you at least tidy up a bit?" I snapped, my patience wearing thin. Mark looked up, unfazed. "Oh, come on, Ella. I'm not your maid. And I had a rough day." I was flabbergasted. "Rough day? Doing what, Mark? You've been sitting here all day." He shrugged, taking another swig of his beer. "I'm dealing with stuff, okay? It's not easy losing your business." I threw my bag down, frustration boiling over. "And you think it's easy for me? Working all day to keep us afloat while you do nothing?" Mark stood up, his face a mask of anger. "I'm not doing nothing, Ella. I'm trying to figure things out." "Figure what out, Mark? How to avoid responsibility? We have a daughter, for God's sake," I retorted, my voice rising. He shot back, "Don't you think I know that? I don't need you nagging me every day." The argument escalated, with harsh words and accusations flying back and forth. Lily, hearing the commotion, came into the room, her eyes wide and scared. "Mommy, Daddy, please stop yelling," she pleaded, her voice small and shaky. We both fell silent, the anger dissipating as we looked at our daughter. Mark muttered something under his breath and walked out, leaving me to comfort a crying Lily. The days that followed were a blur of silent meals, curt exchanges, and an ever-widening gulf between us. I was struggling to keep it together, juggling work, household chores, and caring for Lily, while Mark seemed to retreat further into his shell. The tension in our house had become a constant, like some unwelcome guest who had overstayed their welcome. But nothing prepared me for what came next. It started with small amounts of cash disappearing from my purse. At first, I thought I was just being forgetful, but then the amounts grew larger. One evening, after noticing another missing 50, I confronted Mark. He was in the living room, as usual, eyes glued to the TV. "Mark, have you been taking money from my purse?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't look at me. "What? No, why would I do that?" I felt a surge of anger. "Because it's missing, Mark. And I know I didn't spend it." Mark finally turned to face me, his expression defensive. "Look, I needed some cash, okay? It's not a big deal." I was incredulous. "Not a big deal? It's stealing, Mark. From your own wife." He stood up, his voice rising. "I don't need a lecture, Ella. I took a bit of cash for beer. It's not like I'm blowing it on something stupid." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Beer? You're stealing money for beer? While I'm working day and night to keep this family together?" Mark's face hardened. "Yeah, beer. It's not like I have much else to enjoy these days." I felt a mix of anger and sadness. "That's your excuse? I'm out there busting my back, and you're here drinking away our money." Mark scoffed. "Oh, please. You're always so dramatic. It's just a few bucks." I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "This isn't just about the money, Mark. It's about trust. How can I trust you if you're stealing from me?" Mark didn't answer, just turned back to the TV, effectively ending the conversation. The next day, I made a decision. I called Susan to talk about the situation. "It's about Mark. He's been taking money from my purse. For beer," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. Susan laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Oh, Ella, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. He's just having a tough time right now. I couldn't believe her response. Susan, he's stealing from me. How can you just brush that off? Susan's tone was dismissive. He's your husband, Ella. What's yours is his. Besides, it's just a bit of cash. I felt a flash of anger. Just a bit of cash? That's not the point, Susan. He's not contributing anything, and now he's taking what little we have left. Susan was unyielding. Well, I don't see the problem. He needs to unwind. You're being too hard on him. I hung up, realizing that talking to Susan was pointless. She was never going to see things from my perspective. One morning, I woke up to find Mark's side of the bed empty. That wasn't unusual these days, but as hours turned into a full day without a word from him, worry started to set in. I called his phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. Finally, after a week of silence, I heard the front door open. Mark walked in, looking different. There was an unfamiliar air of confidence about him. He wasn't alone. His mother, Susan, strutted in behind him with a smug look on her face. Mark, where the hell have you been? I've been worried sick, I exclaimed, a mix of relief and anger washing over me. Mark looked at me, a smirk on his lips. Oh, Ella, always so dramatic. I have news. I was confused. News? What news? He pulled out a lottery ticket, waving it in front of me. This, my dear Ella, is our ticket out. I won, Ella. I won $10 million. My heart skipped a beat. What? How? Susan chimed in, her voice dripping with condescension. He bought a lottery ticket with your credit card. Looks like it was a smart investment, after all. I was stunned, my mind racing. My credit card? You used my credit card without asking? Mark's smirk grew wider. Well, I needed something to cheer me up after all the nagging. And look, it paid off. The reality of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. He had taken my card, bought a lottery ticket, and won. It was almost too much to take in. But, Mark, that's our money, then. We won, I said, still trying to process the news. Mark's expression turned cold. No, Ella. I won. And with this money, I'm starting a new life. Without you. I felt as if the floor had been pulled from under me. What are you saying? He was blunt, his words cutting deep. I'm saying I'm leaving you, Ella. I'm tired of this life, tired of you. I want a fresh start, and now I can afford it. Susan laughed, a cruel sound that made my skin crawl. Oh, Ella, you really thought you were so smart, didn't you? But you see, you've underestimated my son. He's a winner, and you're just left with nothing. Mark grabbed a suitcase he had apparently packed earlier. I'm moving in with Mom. You can keep the house and whatever else. I don't need it anymore. Reeling from Mark's departure and his shocking betrayal, I knew I had to act fast. The first thing I did was call a lawyer, Mr. Jacobs, a no-nonsense man who had a reputation for being tough and fair. Mr. Jacobs, my husband won the lottery with a ticket he bought using my credit card, and now he's leaving me and taking everything, I explained, my voice shaking with emotion. Mr. Jacobs listened intently, his voice calm and steady. All right, Ella. Let's meet tomorrow. We'll go over everything, and I'll see what we can do. The next day, I sat in Mr. Jacobs' office, poring over bank statements and the credit card transaction that showed the purchase of the lottery ticket. Based on this, we have a strong case, Mr. Jacobs said, his eyes scanning the documents. The ticket was bought with your money, which means you have a claim to the winnings. I felt a glimmer of hope. So, what's our next step? We file for a court injunction to freeze the lottery winnings until this is sorted out legally. Then we prepare for a court battle, he replied, his tone determined. The court day arrived faster than I had anticipated. Mark and Susan were there, smug looks on their faces, as if they had already won. My heart was pounding as I took my seat, Mr. Jacobs beside me. The judge, a stern-looking woman, called the court to order. Mr. Jacobs presented our case with clear, concise arguments, emphasizing the transaction and my contribution to our family's finances. Mark's lawyer tried to argue that the ticket was a separate entity from our marital assets, but Mr. Jacobs countered effectively, showcasing the joint nature of our finances and Mark's lack of contribution. Then, it was time for Mark to take the stand. His lawyer asked, "Mr. Johnson, did you use your wife's credit card to purchase the lottery ticket?" Mark replied, with a hint of arrogance in his voice, "Yes, but it was just a stroke of luck. It has nothing to do with her." "And what were your intentions with the winnings?" his lawyer continued. Mark glanced at me before answering, "To start a new life. I was tired of being underappreciated and belittled." I felt a surge of anger but remained silent. It was my turn to testify. Mr. Jacobs asked me, "Mrs. Johnson, can you tell the court about your financial contributions to your household?" I took a deep breath. I've been the primary breadwinner for the past few years. I paid the bills, took care of our daughter, and even supported Mark's mother financially. The judge listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. After both sides presented their cases, she called for a recess before making her decision. The wait was agonizing. When we were called back in, the judge looked at both of us before delivering her verdict. Considering the evidence and the circumstances, I rule that the lottery winnings are a joint marital asset. Therefore, I award 3/4 of the winnings to Mrs. Johnson and 1/4 to Mr. Johnson. Mark's face was a picture of shock, and Susan's smugness had evaporated. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. It was more than just a legal victory, it was justice. Life after the courtroom drama was like stepping onto a new path, one filled with possibilities and new challenges. My priority was Lily and rebuilding our lives with the winnings that I had fought so hard for. The money was invested wisely, ensuring a stable future for us. Meanwhile, I heard through the grapevine that Mark and his mother, Susan, had blown through their share on frivolous entertainment and were now left with nothing. One day, while running errands, I bumped into Mark. He was a shadow of his former self, unshaven, clothes rumpled, and an air of defeat hanging around him. "Ella, look at what you've done to me. I'm broke, in debt, and they're taking the house," he blurted out, his voice tinged with desperation. I looked at him, feeling no sympathy. "Mark, you did this to yourself. You and your mother couldn't handle the money, and now you're paying the price." He scowled, bitterness seeping through his words. "So, you're just going to gloat? See me suffer?" I shook my head, my resolve firm. "I'm not gloating, Mark. I'm just living my life. You made your choices, and I made mine." He tried to interject, but I cut him off. "You know, Mark, you and your mother never forgave me for taking what was rightfully mine. You spent your share without a thought for the future. That's on you." Mark's face twisted with anger, but there was a hint of regret in his eyes. "You could have shared more. You could have." I interrupted him. "I could have what, Mark? Bailed you out after you betrayed me? After you and your mother laughed in my face? No. I've moved on." He stood there, defeated, as I walked away. In that moment, I realized how far I had come. I had faced betrayal and heartache, but I hadn't let it break me. Instead, I built a better life for Lily and me, a life built on hard work and smart choices.
I'm Melissa, pushing 48, and if you told me 5 years back I'd be running my own gig, I'd have laughed in your face. Life in the city is tough, tougher when you're single and hustling in a pet store, barely making rent. But here I am, owner of Urban Paws, a pet care agency born out of necessity when the world turned upside down, thanks to a pandemic. My days are a blur of barking dogs, purring cats, and the occasional parrot telling me off. But it's mine, every bit of it, from the chewed-up leashes to the last-minute pet-sitting requests. Melissa, the Johnson's terrier, got into the trash again. It's like the fifth time this month. Liz, my right-hand woman and part-time fire extinguisher, announced as she stormed into my makeshift office, a broom in one hand and her phone in the other. Tell them it's time for some crate training. And bill them for the extra cleanup. I shot back without looking up from my laptop. The screen was a battlefield of schedules, bookings, and the never-ending list of tasks that came with running a small business. It was just another Tuesday, or so I thought, bustling with the usual chaos of barks and meows, when Jack strolled in. He had this big, scruffy dog with him, a Great Dane with eyes as kind as his owner's. Hey, I'm Jack. God told you're the best in town for keeping critters happy when their humans are away. Is it true? He asked, his voice smooth but edged with a hint of playfulness. I couldn't help but smile, brushing a stray hair from my face. I guess you'll have to find out for yourself, won't you? What's the big guy's name? Thor. After the god of thunder, though the only thing he's striking is fear into the heart of my vacuum cleaner. Jack quipped, and I laughed, genuinely. It was the first time in a long time that a client's visit felt more like a casual chat between friends. Over the next few weeks, Jack became more than just a client. He'd pop in not just to drop off Thor, but to bring us coffee, to chat, and sometimes, I suspected, just to see me. You know, Melissa, I think Thor's got a better social life than I do now, thanks to you, he said one day, leaning casually against the counter. Maybe you need to get out more, or maybe Thor's just more charming than you. I teased back, enjoying the easy banter that had developed between us. Jack's visits became the highlight of my day, a pleasant distraction from the endless responsibilities of running a business. It wasn't long before he asked me out, catching me completely off guard. Melissa, would you, I don't know, like to grab dinner with me sometime? Not as Thor's human, but just as, well, you and me? I remember blinking at him, surprised, my heart racing for reasons I couldn't quite understand. Are you asking me out on a date, Jack? Yeah, I guess I am. What do you say? It was all so unexpected. My life had been about work, about surviving and making it on my own. Yet, here was Jack, looking at me with those hopeful eyes, and all I could think was, why not? Sure, why not? Let's do dinner. That dinner was the first of many, the beginning of something neither of us fully understood but were eager to explore. Jack was different from anyone I'd ever known. He was kind, sure, but there was a toughness to him, a resilience that resonated with my own. We talked about everything and nothing, from our dreams to our pasts, and everything in between. A year later, when Jack asked me to marry him, it didn't come as a shock. It felt right, like the next step in our journey together. I said yes without hesitation, excited for what the future held for us. I never thought I'd find someone like you, Melissa. You've changed my life in the best possible way, Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. And you've given me a reason to believe in love again, Jack. I can't wait to see where this adventure takes us, I replied, my heart full. Our engagement was a testament to the unexpected twists life can throw at you. From the moment Jack and Thor walked into my life, everything changed. I found love, companionship, and a sense of belonging I hadn't realized I was missing. Jack's parents, an amazingly kind and sweet married couple, accepted me as their own daughter. We sometimes came to visit them. I helped Jack's mother set the table, while Jack and his father discussed another basketball game. It was real, you know? Life's funny, you know? One day you're floating on cloud 9, everything's peachy, and then boom, it all starts to crumble. That's exactly what happened with Jack and me. It all started so subtle, I barely noticed. But let me backtrack a bit and give you the full picture. I was knee-deep in paperwork at the agency when Jack started mentioning he felt off. At first, it was just the odd sniffle here and there, nothing to write home about. But then, it escalated. Colds, backaches, you name it. I figured we all hit a rough patch, health-wise, but Jack, he took it to another level. One evening, I came home later than usual, the pet agency was buzzing, and I was juggling a million things at once. Jack was sprawled on the couch, looking miserable. Babe, I'm feeling crappy again, he groaned as I dropped my keys on the counter. I sighed, hanging up my coat. You've been saying that a lot. Maybe it's time to see a doctor? Or we could try switching up our diet, get you on some vitamins? Jack's response was a scoff. Oh, great, Melissa. That's just great. You think a few veggies and some pills are gonna fix everything? You just don't get it, do you? I was taken aback. Jack, I'm just trying to help. I'm no doctor, but sitting around moping isn't going to do much. You've gotta at least try. That set him off. Try? You think I'm not trying? You have no idea what it's like. You're out all day, busy with your precious agency and those animals. When do you ever stop to think about me, huh? His words stung. I was busting my ass, trying to keep our life together, keep the business running, and here he was, accusing me of not caring. Jack, that's not fair. I'm working to support us, to build something. And I do worry about you, all the damn time. But talking to Jack was like talking to a brick wall. He just wouldn't budge. Whatever, Melissa. Just leave me alone. So, I did. I retreated to our bedroom, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness. This wasn't the man I married. Where did that caring, understanding guy go? It felt like I was living with a stranger. The next few weeks were more of the same. Jack's health complaints became a daily soundtrack, and any suggestion I made was shot down. He was convinced that the world was against him, and I was the conductor. Our arguments became more frequent, more heated. It felt like we were speaking different languages. I suggested exercise, he accused me of being insensitive. I mentioned healthy eating, and he'd snap about me not understanding his pain. Frustrated with our nowhere conversations, I finally put my foot down. Look, Jack, this isn't working. You need to see a doctor, get some real advice. Not just guesswork and internet crap. Jack was resistant, but exhausted. Fine, Melissa. I'm tired, okay? Maybe it is just needing rest. But I'll go, for your peace of mind. So, 2 weeks later, I dragged him to the clinic, despite his reluctance. He went through all the checks, an MRI, the whole 9 yards. When we sat across from the doctor, awaiting the verdict, I held my breath. The doctor's words were a punch in the gut, but not the kind I expected. There's nothing seriously wrong. A slight inflammation of a nerve, but with proper care and some physical therapy, you should be fine. You can work. I sighed, a mix of relief and frustration. See, Jack? It's not as bad as you thought. We can work on this, get you back on your feet. But Jack, he wasn't having any of it. His face twisted in anger. So, that's it, huh? You're happy now? You think I'm faking it? You just want me out of the house, working myself to death. You don't care about me, Melissa. You're heartless. All you care about is your damn money and business. I was floored. Here I was, trying to find a solution, and he was accusing me of the worst. Jack, that's not fair. I'm trying to help. I want you healthy, not this. I care about us. But he wouldn't listen, wrapped up in his own narrative of neglect and accusations. And there I was, standing at a crossroads, wondering how love had turned into a battleground of wills. Life at home had become a marathon, one I hadn't signed up for, but was running every day. Work at the agency kept me chained till late, juggling clients and pet emergencies like a circus act. By the time I got home, the real work began. Jack's dog, Thor, needed walking, a task Jack conveniently forgot existed. So, I'd trudge through the neighborhood, leash in hand, trying to decompress from the day. Once back, the kitchen called my name. Cooking wasn't just about feeding us, it was my moment of zen. But with Jack planted on the couch, my zen often turned into a simmering pot of resentment. The apartment didn't clean itself either. While I scrubbed and sorted, Jack became part of the furniture, an immovable object glued to whatever screen caught his fancy. One night, As I balanced cleaning up after dinner with a mental list of tasks for the next day, I snapped. Jack, can you at least help out with the dishes? Or anything, really? My voice, usually calm, carried a sharp edge. He glanced up, the glow from the TV painting shadows on his face. Melissa, you know this stuff is your domain. I'm just not cut out for it. Cut out for it? It's dishes, Jack, not rocket science. We both live here. We should both contribute. The words tumbled out, fueled by exhaustion and frustration. He shrugged, a gesture that fanned the flames. That's a woman's job, Mel. My mom never had my dad lift a finger around the house. I stared at him, incredulous. The argument spiraled into familiar territory, me advocating for partnership, him retreating into outdated ideals. It was a merry-go-round of frustration, going nowhere. A month into this domestic deadlock, Jack dropped a bombshell. I'm not feeling well, Mel. Think I need to quit my job. Find something remote. His declaration hung between us, another layer of tension. Trying to keep the peace, I offered a solution. Why don't you work with me at the agency? There's plenty you can do from home. Handling applications, overseeing the staff remotely, managing payments. It could be good for you. His reaction was like I'd suggested he jump off a bridge. Feel sorry for me? Is that it? You think offering me a job is going to fix things? His voice was a mix of anger and something else, disappointment, maybe. No, Jack, I'm trying to help. We need 2 incomes, and this way, you can work at your own pace. It's not about pity, it's about practicality. My attempt at reason fell on deaf ears. By the time we hit what I'd call the breaking point, things between Jack and me were frostier than a freezer. I'm not one for drama, but living with Jack had become like walking on eggshells, covered in barbed wire. One day, I'm elbow-deep in work, scheduling appointments, and dealing with a no-show employee, when Jack calls me. He's at home, as usual, and his voice is dripping with that tone, you know, the one that says he's about to make your day even longer. Melissa, we're out of those organic chips I like. And grab some of that craft beer on your way back, would ya? He says, like he's doing me a favor by giving me errands. I press the phone against my ear, trying not to let the irritation seep into my voice. Jack, I'm swamped. Can't it wait? Or maybe you could pick them up. Silence. Then, you know I'm not feeling great, Melissa. Why do you always have to make things so difficult? Difficult, right. Because asking him to get off the couch is akin to asking him to climb Everest. I bite back a snarky retort and agree, because it's easier than arguing. By the time I get home, arms laden with groceries, including his precious chips and beer, the house looks like a cyclone hit it. Dishes piled up, laundry spilling out of the basket, Thor rushing for a walk, and there's Jack, planted on the couch, glued to the TV. I lose it. Jack, seriously? You couldn't have done some of this while I was out? He turns, eyes narrow. What's your problem, Melissa? I told you, I'm not feeling well. I'm standing there, groceries still in my hands, and I just start laughing. It's that or cry. Not feeling well? Jack, the doctor said you're fine. This is just laziness. He stands up then, face red. You don't believe me? You think I'm lying about my pain? It's not about believing you, Jack. It's about trying, doing something. Anything. I'm practically pleading now, but he's having none of it. I didn't tell Jack's parents anything, for fear of upsetting them. We visited them occasionally, and they came to us with return visits. The issue of Jack's health was never raised during our conversations. It was surprising, because he loved to tell everyone about his well-being. But I didn't have time to think about it. Months dragged on, each day blending into the next, with a sameness that was suffocating. Jack was still home, glued to the couch under the guise of looking for remote work. Health excuses became his shield against any form of employment outside the house. It was like living with a ghost who occasionally raided the fridge or flicked through channels. Then, out of the blue, he comes up with this grand plan. "Babe, Mom's birthday's coming up. I booked a table at Chez Fancy. You'll cover it, right?" His nonchalance about dropping a bomb like that was astounding. I stared at him, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief boiling inside. "Cover it? Jack, are you out of your mind? You've not lifted a finger to contribute, and now you want me to shell out for an expensive dinner?" He looked taken aback, as if the thought that I would object was alien to him. "Come on, Melissa. It's for my mom. Don't you want to help make it special?" That was the last straw. Making it special doesn't mean throwing money at it, especially money you didn't earn. If you want to do something for your mom, how about you actually put in some effort? Cook her dinner. Invite her over. Show her you care without spending money we don't have. To my surprise, he caved. All right. I'll cook. It'll be great, you'll see." Suddenly, the affectionate and attentive Jack I remembered from our early days made a brief reappearance. It was enough to kindle a flicker of hope in me. Maybe this was the turning point. Maybe things could get back to how they were. But life has a way of dashing hopes with brutal efficiency. On the day of the big dinner, I was slammed by a nasty bug. Head pounding, legs aching, the works. I could barely stand up straight. Leaving work early, I dragged myself home, dreading the evening ahead. Walking through the door, I found Jack exactly where I left him that morning, planted on the couch. "Jack, I'm really not feeling well. How's dinner coming along?" He didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. "Oh, my back's acting up again. Can't stand, let alone cook. Maybe we can just do the restaurant thing?" I was floored. "You've got to be kidding. I'm barely standing here, Jack. And you want to go out? We can't afford that dinner." He had the gall to look annoyed. "Well, what do you want me to do, Melissa? Magic up a meal? You know how my back is. Maybe you could." The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. Jack was never going to cook that dinner. It was all just another one of his games, a deception dressed up in false promises. Standing there, feeling like my body was at war with itself, I told Jack about how sick I felt, hoping for a sliver of sympathy, maybe even a touch of care. But what I got was a cold shoulder. "If you're too sick to cook, then just stay home," he said, his voice void of any warmth. "I'll take my folks out to eat. Just give me the money for the restaurant." I was floored. The audacity, the sheer lack of empathy, it left me speechless. Arguing was the last thing I had the energy for. So, I swallowed my pride along with some antipyretic, hoping it would quell the fever enough for me to stand in the kitchen without passing out. I started on the main course, my movements sluggish, every stir of the pot a monumental effort. To make things easier, or so I thought, I ordered some snacks from the cafe down the street. But as I reached into the oven to pull out the casserole, a wave of dizziness hit me. I stumbled, catching myself on the edge of the counter, just in time. That's when Jack decided to kick me while I was down. "You can't even handle this, can you? I'm sick of it." His words were a punch to the gut, stripping away any pretense of concern he might have feigned earlier. I was doing my best, sick as a dog, trying to hold everything together, and here he was, berating me for not living up to some impossible standard. I swayed again, barely able to stand on my feet. And then the kitchen door slammed open with a force that made us both jump. It was Jack's parents. At that moment, everything changed. Their faces were a mix of shock and anger, immediately rushing over to me as I nearly collapsed. His mom, her eyes wide with worry, helped me to the couch, her glance flitting between me and Jack with disbelief. "Why on earth didn't you cancel dinner, Jack? Forcing Melissa to cook when she's this sick," she exclaimed, her voice a mixture of anger and concern. Hearing her, I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. The frustration, the loneliness, the sheer exhaustion of it all came pouring out. "We've been on thin ice for ages," I sobbed, telling her about the years of taking care of Jack, his endless ailments, his refusal to work, and the sea of bills for gadgets and gizmos that just gathered dust. I showed her the receipts, evidence of our spiraling debt. She was stunned. "Why didn't you say anything sooner, dear? About his sickness, his job?" I wiped my eyes, looking down. "I didn't want to upset you. I hoped he'd change." She turned to Jack then, her hands gripping his shoulders like she could shake some sense into him. "Why, Jack? Why put Melissa through all this?" And then, she shared something I never knew. Jack had a history of faking illness to avoid responsibilities, a pattern stretching back to his school days. My heart sank. The realization hit me like a truck: my marriage was over. I couldn't tether my life to someone so unwilling to be a partner, so dependent on the sacrifices of others. His parents didn't spare him, their disappointment clear as day. "We've indulged you for too long," his dad said, voice hard with a finality that brooked no argument. "I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce," I declared, the words heavy but freeing. His mom nodded, her eyes sad but understanding. "I would do the same, dear." They then turned to Jack, their final verdict chilling. "Don't expect any more help from us. And forget about any inheritance if you don't turn your life around." Jack's reaction was desperate, a stark contrast to his usual apathy. He pleaded, begged even, but his mom just pushed him away. "You owe Melissa an apology, not us." But I was done. Done with the excuses, the lies, the endless cycle of hope and disappointment. It was time to move on, to rebuild from the ashes of what was supposed to be my happily ever after. Jack's pleas fell on deaf ears, my decision was made. It was time for a new beginning, one where I could find happiness and peace, free from the weight of carrying us both. After the dust of divorce settled, I threw myself into my work and the company of the animals I dedicated my life to. It was clear, the path ahead was mine alone to carve, and frankly, I relished the freedom. The end of my marriage, while a chapter one wouldn't choose to reread, taught me lessons I'd carry forever. It wasn't about regret, it was about growth. Jack, on his end, managed to snag himself a job, nothing fancy, but enough to keep him afloat in some modest digs. Last I heard, he's been playing the sympathy card hard, telling anyone who'd listen how I left him in his hour of need. But our mutual friends? They knew the score. They saw through his tales and, from what trickled back to me, his stories earned them more eye rolls than sympathies. The day he showed up at my office was a test I didn't know I was ready for until it happened. There he was, standing in the lobby with a bouquet of flowers that looked as out of place in his hands as sincerity in his apologies. I spotted him the moment I stepped out of my office, the sight bringing a mix of irritation and a weird sense of déjà vu. "What are you doing here, Jack?" I asked, not bothering to mask the edge in my voice. He shuffled, looking everywhere but at me. I wanted to say I'm sorry, Melissa. I've changed. I was hoping we could." "Stop." I cut him off, holding up a hand. "Just stop, Jack. You haven't changed. You're just sorry you're on your own now." He tried to interject, the flowers extended towards me like a peace offering. But I was done accepting anything from him. "Save it, Jack. I'm not the person you left behind anymore. I've moved on. It's time you did the same." "But Melissa." "No. This is my place of work, my sanctuary. You don't get to waltz in here with a bouquet and expect everything to be all right." I stepped closer, my voice firm. "You need to leave, now." He looked like he might argue, but something in my stance must have told him it would be futile. With a final, lingering look, he turned and left, the door closing quietly behind him. Watching him go, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was confirmation, a sign that the life I was building was mine and mine alone, free from the shadows of a past that no longer had any hold on me. Life has a funny way of throwing you curveballs when you least expect it. I'm Andrea, a PR manager who spent more time in boardrooms than in the dating scene. At 35, my life was a testament to hard work and late nights, not romantic dinners or weekend getaways. But then Michael walked into my life, or more accurately, into my project meeting. Michael was the kind of guy you noticed the moment he entered a room, not because he tried to be the center of attention, but because of his quiet confidence. He was representing our new client, and from our first handshake, I felt a spark that was hard to ignore. We spent weeks working closely, and I found myself looking forward to our meetings more for the chance to chat with him than the actual work. It was crazy. Here I was, a woman who prided herself on her independence, getting butterflies over a business partner. One evening, as we were wrapping up, I made a spur-of-the-moment decision. "Hey, Michael, fancy grabbing dinner?" My treat. "We can celebrate the project's progress." It was a lame excuse, but it was all I could come up with. Michael raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on his lips. "Dinner, huh? Sure, why not? But let's make it fair, my treat next time." Dinner was a mix of work talk and personal stories. It was easy, comfortable. As the night drew to a close, I knew I didn't want this to be just another work dinner. Gathering all my courage, I blurted out, "Michael, I'm going to be straight with you. I like you. More than just a business partner." There was a moment of silence. Michael looked surprised, then thoughtful. "Andrea, I'm not sure what to say. I like you too, but I've got some baggage. My ex-wife, Laura, let's just say she left a mark. I'm not sure I'm ready to jump into something new." His honesty caught me off guard. "Look, I get it. I'm not asking for a fairy tale here. How about we just see where things go? No pressure." Michael nodded. "All right, Andrea. Let's take it slow." That dinner marked the beginning of something special. We continued to meet, first under the guise of work, then openly as something more. It was refreshing, being with someone who understood the demands of a career yet made time for the little moments. One evening, as we were walking back to our cars after a spontaneous movie date, Michael stopped and looked at me. "Andrea, these past few months have been amazing. I didn't think I could feel this way again after Laura. I want this, us." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Me too, Michael. I'm all in." Building a life with Michael felt like we were laying bricks for a foundation that was meant to last. After the initial awkwardness of transitioning from work partners to life partners, we found our rhythm. We moved into my place, a cozy 2-bedroom house that now felt more like a home with Michael's stuff scattered around. One lazy Sunday morning, as we sat with our coffees in the living room, Michael looked around and let out a content sigh. "You know, Andrea, I never thought I'd feel at home so quickly anywhere after, well, you know." I grinned, nudging him with my foot. "Yeah, I know. But hey, look at us now. Making a home out of a house filled with nothing but work files and takeout menus." He chuckled, picking up a stray sock from the floor. "Speaking of which, we really need to work on our domestic skills. I can't even remember the last time we cooked." "Hey, speak for yourself." "I make a mean cereal," I shot back, laughing. It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. Balancing our demanding jobs with our personal life was a juggling act. We'd often find ourselves working late, only to come home to each other, sometimes too exhausted to even talk. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, I flopped down next to Michael on the couch, burying my face in the cushions. "I'm beat. If I see one more email, I'm going to scream." Michael, laptop still open on his lap, glanced at me and closed it with a snap. "That's it. We're taking a break this weekend. No work, no emails. Just you, me, and maybe a little adventure." I lifted my head, intrigued. "An adventure, huh? What did you have in mind?" He wiggled his eyebrows. "How about a road trip? Just hit the road and see where we end up." The idea of just driving off with no particular destination sounded perfect. "I'm in. But let's make one rule, no talking about work. Deal?" "Deal," he agreed, and we shook on it. That weekend, we did just that. We drove to a small beach town a few hours away, spending our days exploring and our nights in a quaint bed and breakfast. It was refreshing, being away from the hustle of our daily lives, reminding us of the simple pleasures we often overlooked. Back home, as we settled into our routine again, it was clear that the little getaway had recharged us. Our conversations shifted from deadlines and meetings to plans for the future, our future. One evening, as we were cleaning up after a rare attempt at cooking dinner together, Michael turned to me, a serious look on his face. "Andrea, I've been thinking. We've been doing great, you know, building a life together. I want to make it official." I froze, a soapy dish in hand. "Official? You mean, like..." "Yeah, like marriage. I want you to be my wife, Andrea. I know it's sudden, but I've never been sure about anything." The dish almost slipped from my hands. "Michael, are you serious?" "As a heart attack," he said, his eyes locking with mine. I put the dish down, water and soap suds forgotten, and walked over to him. Yes, I'll marry you." Life with Michael was like a dream until Laura, his ex-wife, decided she wasn't done with him yet. At first, her calls were rare, a nuisance we brushed off. But then, they picked up frequency, each one more demanding than the last. One evening, while Michael and I were trying to enjoy a quiet night in, his phone rang. The caller ID flashed Laura's name, and he sighed heavily before answering. "Laura, what is it now?" I could only hear his side of the conversation, but his furrowed brow told me it was the same old song and dance. After he hung up, he tossed his phone on the couch, frustration written all over his face. "She needs help moving some stuff this weekend. Can you believe that?" I frowned, my patience wearing thin. "Michael, why does she always turn to you for help? She's got friends, hasn't she?" He shrugged, a helpless look in his eyes. "I don't know, Andrea. I guess old habits die hard?" This wasn't just about old habits, though. Laura's calls became more personal, and she even started reaching out to me, offering unsolicited advice on how to keep Michael happy. The first time she called, I was taken aback. "Andrea, it's Laura. I just thought I'd give you a heads up. Michael loves his steak medium rare, not medium. And he hates peas. Thought you should know." I was seething, but I kept my cool. "Thanks, Laura. I'll keep that in mind," I said through gritted teeth, before hanging up. It was clear Laura was playing games, trying to wedge herself between us. Her audacity peaked when she started inviting Michael over for dinner for old time's sake. That was the last straw for me. One night, after another one of Laura's invitations, I confronted Michael. "This has to stop, Michael. It's us now, not you and her. Why can't she respect that?" Michael ran his hands through his hair, looking exhausted. I know. It's just complicated." "Complicated? What's so complicated about telling your ex-wife to back off?" He didn't have an answer, and the silence between us grew heavy. It was clear we needed to address the Laura situation head-on if we were going to move forward. The next time Laura called, I answered Michael's phone. "Laura, listen. You need to stop calling. Michael is with me now. You had your chance, and you blew it." There was a pause on the other end before Laura's voice came through, sharp as a knife. "Oh, I see. So you're answering his phone now? You think you've won him over?" "This isn't over, honey." I clenched my teeth, anger boiling inside me. "No, Laura. It is over. You need to move on and let us live our lives." We hung up, but the damage was done. Laura's intrusions had cast a shadow over our relationship, stirring doubts and insecurities we'd worked hard to overcome. It was a chilly Thursday evening when Laura's latest stunt unfolded. She called Michael, her voice shaky, claiming she was in dire need of help, something about a leaking pipe in her house. Michael looked at me, phone still pressed to his ear, uncertainty in his eyes. "She says it's an emergency, Andrea. I feel like we should go, but I want us to handle this together. Are you okay with that?" I was tired of her games, but I nodded. Let's do this. But we're setting boundaries today, Michael. This ends now. Armed with a resolve to end Laura's manipulations, we drove to her place. The air between us was tense, a mix of anxiety and determination. As we approached her front door, I could feel my heart pounding. Michael rang the bell, and we waited. The door swung open, and there stood Laura. She wore a revealing outfit and held a glass of wine, a stark contrast to the emergency she had described. Michael's face went from concern to furious in a second. Laura, what the hell is this? You said it was an emergency. Laura's confident demeanor faltered as she looked from Michael to me, her plan unraveling. I thought we could talk, Michael. Just the two of us. I didn't expect you to bring her. I stepped forward, my patience worn thin. Enough, Laura. Your little games end now. We're not doing this anymore. Michael is with me. You need to respect that and move on. Laura's eyes flashed with anger. Move on? How can I move on when you've taken everything from me? Michael was my husband, and you. Michael interrupted, his voice firm. I was your husband, Laura. Past tense. And I left because of your actions, not Andrea's. You need to accept that and stop this nonsense. The ride home was quiet, a time for reflection on the events that had unfolded. When we finally spoke, it was with a sense of relief and a renewed commitment to our relationship. Michael, we can't let anyone or anything come between us again. We need to be a team, always. He nodded, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. You're right, Andrea. I promise, from now on, it's you and me against the world. No more ex-wife drama. Despite the steps we took to protect ourselves, Laura's vendetta against us escalated to a public spectacle that neither Michael nor I could have anticipated. It happened on a night that was supposed to be a celebration of a significant milestone in my career. We were at a downtown restaurant, surrounded by colleagues and friends, the mood light and festive. As we raised our glasses for a toast, the sound of the restaurant door slamming open turned every head in the room. Laura stormed in, her eyes wild with anger, zeroing in on Michael and me. Without hesitation, she began yelling, her voice cutting through the chatter of the room like a knife. Michael, how could you do this to me? And you, she spat, turning her venomous gaze towards me, you homewrecker. The room fell silent, all eyes on us. I felt my face flush with a mix of embarrassment and rage. Michael stood up, his body tense. Laura, get out of here. You're making a scene over nothing. It's over between us, and it's time you accepted that. But Laura wasn't deterred. She continued, her words laced with bitterness. You think you can just replace me? I was his wife. And you, she hissed, pointing a finger at me. You're nothing but a thief. I stood up, my patience exhausted. Laura, enough. You've crossed a line. We've done nothing wrong. You need to leave, now, before we call the police. Her laughter was cold and mocking. Call the police? For what? Telling the truth? Everyone here should know what kind of people you really are. The tension in the air was palpable. My colleagues and friends looked on, some in shock, others with looks of sympathy. It was a humiliating situation, being accused and insulted in front of everyone important to me. Seeing that his words had no effect, Michael grabbed his phone. That's it. I'm calling them. You've gone too far, Laura. As he dialed, Laura seemed to realize the seriousness of the situation. Her defiance wavered for a moment, but then she turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving a trail of shocked silence in her wake. The aftermath of her outburst was a mixture of awkward apologies and whispered conversations. I tried to smooth over the disruption, but the evening was ruined. As we drove home, the weight of the public humiliation settled heavily on my shoulders. Michael, I can't believe she did that. In front of everyone. My voice was thick with unshed tears. Michael reached over, squeezing my hand. Andrea, I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this to affect you like it has. We'll get through this, I promise. Laura's actions tonight, they've crossed a line. We'll make sure she can't do anything like this again. His words were meant to comfort, but the reality was hard to bear. Laura's relentless pursuit to disrupt our lives had reached a new low, and the thought of what she might do next was a constant shadow over our happiness. After the confrontation with Laura, Michael and I thought we had finally put an end to her meddling. Life returned to a semblance of normalcy, and for a brief moment, we allowed ourselves to believe that the drama was behind us. However, Laura wasn't done yet, and the next phase of her vendetta against us was about to unfold in a way we never anticipated. It started one morning as I was heading out to work. I found my car covered in what looked like eggs and flour. It was a mess, and the stench was unbearable. Furious, I stormed back inside to grab Michael. Michael, you won't believe this. Come look at what's been done to my car. I shouted, my voice shaking with rage. He followed me outside, and the look on his face when he saw the car mirrored my own anger. What the? Who would do this? We both know who's behind this, I said, barely containing my fury. It's Laura. She's escalating things because we stood up to her. Michael ran his hands through his hair, frustration etched on his face. This is getting out of hand, Andrea. I'm going to call her right now and put an end to this. No, Michael. Calling her won't solve anything. She wants to provoke us. We need to think this through and not play into her hands, I countered, trying to think clearly despite the anger boiling inside me. Reluctantly, Michael agreed, and we decided to take the car to get cleaned, hoping that would be the end of it. But deep down, we both knew it was just the beginning. A few days later, things took a turn for the worse. I started receiving anonymous, threatening letters at work, each one more disturbing than the last. I showed them to Michael, my hands trembling as I handed them over. Look at these, Michael. They're getting sent to my office now. This is serious. We can't just ignore it. Michael's face darkened as he read through the letters. This is harassment. We need to go to the police. She's not just trying to scare us anymore, she's threatening your safety. The trip to the police station was a blur. We filed a report, but without concrete proof that Laura was behind the letters, there wasn't much they could do. Feeling helpless and frustrated, we returned home, trying to come up with a plan. That night, we sat in silence, the weight of the situation pressing down on us. Michael finally broke the silence, his voice low and determined. Andrea, I won't let her hurt you. We'll install security cameras around the house. If she tries anything else, we'll have it on record. The installation of the security cameras felt like a small victory, but the sense of security it brought was fleeting. Laura's next move was something we hadn't anticipated, and it hit closer to home than any of us could have imagined. It was a regular weekday when Michael received a call at work from our neighbor, informing us that someone had been lurking around our house. My heart sank as I listened to Michael relay the message. Andrea, our neighbor just called. Someone's been seen snooping around our house. I'm coming home now. We need to check the footage from the cameras. The rest of the day passed in a haze of worry and fear. When Michael arrived home, we reviewed the footage together, and there she was, Laura, unmistakable in her defiance, caught on camera trespassing on our property. Seeing her there, invading our private space, was the last straw. That's it, Michael. We have proof now. We're taking this to the police, and we're pressing charges. Michael nodded, his jaw set in determination. You're right. It ends now. She's gone too far. Our trip back to the police station, this time armed with evidence, marked the turning point in our battle against Laura. We were no longer just defending ourselves, we were taking the fight to her, ready to do whatever it took to reclaim our peace and security. After months of chaos, it all came crashing down for Laura. The day we learned about her gambling debts and her twisted plan to drag us into her mess was the day the tables turned. Michael and I were at the police station, a place that had become all too familiar, when the detective called us into his office. "Sit down, folks. We've got some news about Laura," he began, shuffling papers on his desk. "Turns out, she's knee-deep in debt. Banks are on her tail, and she's been hitting the casinos hard." Michael's expression hardened. "So, what? She thought she could shake us down to cover her losses?" "Looks like it," the detective replied. "She admitted to wanting to get back at you, Michael. Plan A was to win you back. When that tanked, she switched gears to Plan B, make your life hell, hoping you'd pay up to make it stop." I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. "And she thought this would work? That we'd just hand over cash to get rid of her?" The detective leaned back in his chair. "Desperation makes people do crazy things. But we've got her confession, and we're pressing charges. Harassment, threats, attempted blackmail. She's looking at a hefty fine, at the very least." The court day was something out of a movie. Laura, looking defeated, her lawyer whispering last-minute advice. Michael and I, standing firm, ready to see this through. When it was our turn to speak, Michael laid it all out, the stress, the fear, the constant looking over our shoulders. She tried to tear us apart, to use our past against us. But we're not her ATM. We're not fixing her mess. The judge nodded, scribbling notes. When Laura tried to play the sympathy card, the judge wasn't having it. "You exploited personal relationships for financial gain, Miss Stewart. Your actions have consequences." In the end, the gavel came down hard. After reviewing the evidence and hearing both sides, it's clear that Ms. Stewart has engaged in a pattern of harassment against Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Such behavior cannot be tolerated. Laura's face paled as the judge continued. "Ms. Stewart, you are hereby ordered to cease all contact with Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. Furthermore, you are to pay restitution for the damages caused, including the emotional distress inflicted." As the judge pronounced the verdict, a wave of relief washed over me. Michael squeezed my hand, a silent acknowledgement of our hard-fought victory. With the legal battles behind us and Laura no longer a shadow over our lives, Michael and I could finally breathe easy. Our home, once a battleground of stress and tension, was now filled with laughter and plans for the future. One evening, as we were curled up on the sofa with some old movie playing in the background, Michael turned to me, a soft smile on his lips. "You know, Andrea, I've been thinking a lot about us lately. About everything we've been through." I nestled closer, intrigued. "Oh yeah? And what have you concluded from all that thinking?" He chuckled, his arm tightening around me. "That we're pretty damn unstoppable together. We've weathered a storm that would have sunk most ships. Makes me think we can handle just about anything life throws at us." I couldn't help but smile at his analogy. I like the sound of that. "So, Captain, where do we sail next on this unstoppable journey of ours?" Michael's gaze turned thoughtful, his eyes locking with mine. "Well, First Mate Andrea, I was thinking, maybe it's time we expand the crew?" It took me a second to catch his drift, but when I did, my heart skipped a beat. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "If you think I'm saying we should start trying for a baby, then yes, you're spot on," he said, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and a hint of nervousness. The idea of starting a family had crossed my mind more than once, especially in the quiet moments when I'd daydream about our future. "Michael, that's the best idea you've ever had. I'm all in." As the weeks turned into months, our excitement only grew. We started preparing in earnest, turning one of the spare rooms into a nursery, reading every parenting book we could get our hands on, and imagining our lives with a little one in tow. One day, as I was painting a mural on the nursery wall, Michael came in, a mock-stern look on his face. "I leave you alone for 1 hour, and you turn into Picasso. Should I be worried?" I stepped back, admiring my handiwork. "Only if you don't like elephants. But seriously, Michael, can you believe this? We're really doing this." He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "I can. It feels right, Andrea. Like this is exactly where we're supposed to be. And it did. Despite the roller coaster of emotions, the fears, and the excitement, it felt like we were right on track. Our journey had been anything but ordinary, but then again, we were anything but an ordinary couple. Life at 32 wasn't quite what I'd pictured. Working as a dentist in a bustling clinic, you'd think I had it all sorted. But behind the professional smiles and polished veneers of my day-to-day, my personal life was fraying at the edges. Ethan and I, Kelly, we'd been hitched for 8 solid years. 8 years that felt both like a blink and a lifetime, especially now that the warmth had seeped out of our marriage, leaving a chill I couldn't shake. We never had kids, not that we didn't try. It just never happened for us, and lately, that felt like less of a disappointment and more like a dodged bullet. My dad's death hit me like a freight train when I was just a kid, leaving me and Mom to fend for ourselves. She was my rock, my safe harbor in every storm. Now, she was the one needing protection, holed up in a rehab center fighting her own battles. I visited her every chance I got, pouring out my worries and fears about Ethan and the gaping rift between us. "He's just not the same, Mom," I confessed during one of those visits, the sterile scent of the center mingling with my unease. "It's like I'm living with a stranger. He's distant, cold even. I don't know what I did wrong." Mom, frail yet fierce as ever, pulled me into a hug that felt like home. "Honey, you've done nothing wrong. People change, and sometimes, not for the better. Remember, I'm here for you, no matter what. Even if you think divorce is the answer, I'll stand by you." Her words were a balm, but they couldn't quite heal the growing wound in my heart. The change in Ethan was like night and day. I reminisced about the man I fell in love with, the one who'd surprised me with midnight picnics and lazy Sunday drives. Now, getting him to share a meal at the table felt like an achievement. Our conversations had turned into monologues, with me playing the lead and Ethan the disinterested audience. "Babe, can we talk? It feels like you're miles away lately," I'd say, trying to bridge the distance. "Yeah, sure. Just let me finish this thing for work," he'd reply, his eyes never leaving the screen of his laptop. But later never came. It was always some project, some deadline that kept him tethered to that damn computer and miles away from our marriage. Mom saw right through me, the worry lines etched deep in my face mirroring her own. "Life's too short, darling. You deserve happiness, with or without him. Don't forget that." Her words echoed in my mind long after our visits. Ethan's transformation from the loving partner, who'd once held me through the night during my darkest times, to this indifferent shadow of a man was baffling. It wasn't just the absence of laughter or the dwindling conversations. It was the lack of interest in anything that concerned me or us. My achievements at the clinic, once celebrated with champagne, now went unnoticed. My worries, once soothed by his words, now lingered in the air between us, unaddressed. I couldn't help but wonder where it all went wrong. Was it the pressure of our unspoken grief over not having children? Or had Ethan simply fallen out of love with me, leaving his body beside me as his heart wandered off somewhere I couldn't reach? The more I pondered, the more I realized how much I leaned on Mom's strength and wisdom. She was my guiding light in the fog that my marriage had become. And as I watched her battle her own demons with a grace I admired, I knew I had to find the strength to face mine. Whether Ethan was by my side or not, I was determined to find my way back to happiness, with Mom's unwavering support lighting the path ahead. That morning, the call came like a bolt from the blue. The voice on the other end, too clinical, too detached, informed me my world had just crumbled. "I'm sorry to tell you, your mother passed away early this morning," the nurse said, her voice a flat note in the cold symphony of my despair. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The tears came hard and fast, a torrent of grief that I couldn't stem. Through the blur, I dialed Ethan, my voice a cracked whisper of the devastation rocking me. Ethan, it's Mom, she's gone. I managed to get out between sobs. There was a pause, a silence that stretched too long. Oh, Kelly. Is that all? What about the inheritance stuff? Did they say anything? Ethan's voice was cold, distant, as if he was talking about a stranger's misfortune, not the death of the woman who'd been like a mother to him too. I felt a punch in the gut. Seriously? That's your first question? My mom just died, Ethan. Look, Kelly, I'm slammed at work. Can we talk about this later? Maybe tonight? His voice was as cold as ice, not a drop of sympathy or love. The rest of the day was a blur. I couldn't focus on my patients, couldn't stop the tears, couldn't believe my mom was gone. And Ethan? His reaction kept replaying in my mind, adding salt to an open wound. Home didn't feel like home that evening. It felt like I was walking into a negotiation, not a place of love and comfort. Ethan was there, all right, looking as if he was gearing up for a board meeting rather than comforting his grieving wife. So, about your mom's passing? He started, no preamble. It's sad, yeah, but we need to think about the future. This could be good for us, financially speaking. I stared at him, disbelief and anger mingling with my grief. Good for us? My mom just died, and all you can think about is money? What happened to you, Ethan? Where's the guy I married? He shrugged, a gesture so dismissive it stung. I'm being realistic. We've got to look at the big picture here. Life goes on, and this inheritance could really help us out. That's when it hit me. The man standing in front of me was a stranger, his words slicing through the last threads of what I thought our marriage was. I missed my mom more than ever, not just for her loss, but for the absence of her guidance in this moment of utter disbelief and betrayal. How can you be so heartless? I asked, the fight draining out of me. My world is shattered, and you're counting cash. Ethan didn't blink. Life's tough, Kelly. Best get used to it. We'll talk more when you're thinking clearly. About the will, I mean. I realized then and there, no amount of money, no inheritance, could fill the void my mother's passing had left, nor could it bridge the chasm between Ethan and me. This was more than loss, it was a revelation of true colors, a beacon of how alone I truly was in my grief. The day of my mom's funeral was a storm of emotions, a whirlwind of grief and disbelief swirling inside me. The ceremony was set, a final goodbye to the woman who'd been my everything. Family, friends, even folks from the clinic where I worked, they all showed up, their faces etched with sorrow and support. But Ethan, my husband, was nowhere to be seen. As the service went on, whispers began to circulate. Where's Ethan? Isn't that her husband's seat empty? The absence of my supposed life partner at such a critical moment was a glaring, painful hole in the proceedings. I could feel the pitying glances, the unspoken questions. I stepped out, needing a moment, and dialed Ethan, my hands trembling with a cocktail of rage and despair. Where are you? The service is about to start, I said, my voice, barely above a whisper, choked with grief. I told you, I've got that big project deadline. I can't just drop everything. Ethan's voice was sharp, impatient. But it's my mom's funeral, Ethan. Can't your work wait for just one day? I could feel the tears threatening to spill over again, frustration mingling with sorrow. Look, I'm sorry, but this is important. We'll talk later, he said before hanging up, leaving me with a dial tone and a heart heavy with betrayal. Standing there, phone in hand, I felt the weight of his absence like a physical blow. The people who came to offer their condolences noticed it too, their whispered words a mixture of sympathy and disapproval. Where's Ethan, Kelly? Couldn't he make it? Aunt Clara asked, her brows knitting together in concern and something else, judgment, maybe. He's caught up with work, I replied, the lie bitter in my mouth. Couldn't get away. She shook her head, patting my hand with a sigh. You're too good for him, dear. The ceremony passed in a blur, each eulogy, each hymn, a reminder of the support I lacked from the one person who had vowed to be there through better or worse. The absence of my husband was a silent scream in the solemnity, his empty chair an echo of the void now in my life. After the burial, as I stood by my mother's final resting place, my cousin Michael approached, his expression a mix of anger and concern. Kelly, I can't believe he didn't show. If you need anything at all, we're here for you. Thanks, Mike. I just don't understand. It's like he's not the man I married, I confessed, the words tasting of salt and despair. He's a fool, and you deserve better, Michael said fiercely. Don't you forget that. That night, the house felt emptier than ever. Ethan didn't come home, didn't call. It was as if the funeral had been for our marriage too, not just for my beloved mother. Lying in our bed alone, I made a decision. No more excuses, no more waiting for things to get better. I couldn't be with someone who couldn't stand beside me in my darkest hour. But first, I needed to confront him, to say the words out loud. Only then could I start to heal, to rebuild from the ashes of my grief and a marriage I could no longer save. Ethan's absence at the funeral wasn't just a missed obligation, it was the final unraveling of our life together, a clear sign that it was time for me to find my path forward, alone. As dawn crept through the curtains, casting a pale light on the emptiness around me, I steeled myself for the conversation ahead, for the end of one chapter and the uncertain start of another. Since the beginning of our marriage, Ethan and I had one big dream, a home of our own, not just any home, but a place where we could grow together, maybe even raise a family. We'd sit on our cramped second-hand couch in the tiny apartment we rented, poring over house listings and dreaming of the day we'd have enough for a down payment. It's gonna be beautiful, babe. A big backyard, a kitchen with an island, room for the kids to play, Ethan would say, his eyes lighting up with every word. I believed in that dream just as much, imagining holiday dinners and a house filled with laughter. Fast forward to now, and that dream felt like a cruel joke. Standing in our kitchen, bank statements in hand, the reality hit me hard. Our account, once steadily growing with every sacrifice and saved penny, was empty. I felt like the floor had given way beneath me. When Ethan walked through the door that evening, I was waiting, the bank statements still clutched in my hands. Ethan, where's our money? Our account is empty. All those years of saving. What happened? He just shrugged, a nonchalant gesture that fueled my growing anger. Needed it for some urgent stuff. Don't worry about it. Urgent stuff? I shot back, my voice rising. That was our future, Ethan. Was it for her? For your mistress and her kid? The accusation hung heavy in the air between us. Ethan's face went pale, his usual confident demeanor faltering. How did you know about that? Without a word, I slammed the photos on the table in front of him, pictures of him with another woman, their intimacy undeniable, and a child that bore a striking resemblance to him. His expression crumbled, the truth laid bare between us. This is where our dreams went, Ethan? To another family? My voice broke, the pain and betrayal slicing through me. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but the words seemed to fail him. The man I had married, the one who shared my dreams, was a stranger now, his choices unraveling the life we had built together. I'd hired a private investigator after months of doubts, and the findings were as clear as day. The moment I learned the truth about where he was during my mom's funeral, everything clicked. He wasn't at work, he was with her, his mistress. I've known about your cheating for a while, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Hired a PI. Saw you with her, on the day we buried my mom. You weren't at work. Ethan laughed, a sound that once brought me joy now filled with mockery. I've been wanting to end this for a long time, he admitted with a coldness that cut deeper than his words. I was just waiting for you to get your inheritance. Guess there's no reason to wait now. His confession was a slap in the face, but it also lit a fire in me. I wasn't going to let this defeat me. You're leaving, but not with my money, I declared with a newfound strength. I informed him of my decision to file for divorce and demanded the return of the money he'd taken from our account, money we'd saved together for a future that was now in ruins. He didn't argue, just packed his stuff and left with a smug look that made me want to scream. The moment the door slammed shut, I called my lawyer, my hands trembling but my voice clear. I'm filing for divorce. He's drained our account for his needs. I want that money back. The lawyer was optimistic, a small comfort. You've got a strong case. Gather all your evidence, photos, bank statements, everything. We'll go after him for every penny. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of clarity. The man I had married, the life we had built together, was gone. But in its place was a chance for a new beginning, one where I could rebuild on my own terms, without deceit or betrayal shadowing my steps. The courtroom was charged with tension, a silent battlefield where eyes did most of the talking. When it was finally time to face off, Ethan couldn't even look me in the eye. The judge's gavel might as well have been the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. You're ordered to return half the savings from the joint account, the judge declared, his voice firm and devoid of sympathy for the man on the other side of the courtroom. Additionally, you'll compensate for your deceitful actions. Sitting across from him, I could barely contain a triumphant smile. It wasn't about the money, it was about accountability. Looks like the truth's out, isn't it? I couldn't help but whisper across the aisle during a recess. He just scoffed, a hollow sound devoid of his usual bravado. Yeah, enjoy it while it lasts. He shot back, his voice a mix of bitterness and resignation. The verdict was a clear victory, a sign that justice had indeed been served. As I walked out of the courtroom, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I was finally free from the chains of a marriage built on lies. A week hadn't even passed when I heard a knock at my door, bold and demanding. There she stood, the other woman, bold as brass and twice as sharp. I'm here for my child. He deserves a share of whatever you got from your mother, she declared, chin up and eyes blazing with entitlement. I couldn't believe the audacity. After everything, this was her move? I let out a laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. You've got some nerve, showing up here and demanding money. Your child isn't my responsibility, nor is he entitled to my mother's inheritance. She bristled at that, her stance aggressive. You owe us. He left us with nothing. The only thing I owe you is a call to the police if you don't get off my property, I retorted, my patience wearing thin. The threat seemed to pierce through her bravado, and with a huff, she turned on her heel and stormed off. Watching her leave, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, relief, but above all, a sense of closure. The door to my past was finally closing, and I could now look towards rebuilding my life, on my own terms. With the legal battle behind me and the last of the unwelcome visitors gone, I realized that this was more than just a win in court. It was a reclaiming of my life and my dignity. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to face it head-on, with a clear heart and a newfound strength. Months had passed since the trial, and the dust had finally settled. I thought I had closed the chapter on my ex-husband and the pain he'd caused. So, when my phone rang and his name flashed on the screen, a storm of emotions whirled inside me. Curiosity, more than anything, led me to accept his offer to meet. We chose a neutral spot, a small cafe that held no memories for either of us. I arrived first, choosing a table in the corner where I could see the door. When Ethan walked in, looking nervously around until his eyes landed on me, a part of me I thought was long buried felt a twinge of something. It wasn't love or longing, just a recognition of our shared past. Ethan complimented me immediately. You look amazing, as always. His voice held a note of sincerity I hadn't heard in years. Thanks, I replied, my tone neutral. So, what's this about? He hesitated, then took a deep breath. I'm alone now, he began, his gaze dropping. She left me, took everything, and now I'm drowning in alimony for our kid. I listened quietly, my expression unreadable. I had imagined countless things he might want to say to me, but this confession wasn't one of them. He rushed on. I've had a lot of time to think, about us, about everything. I know I messed up, but I've changed. I miss you. I still love you. I was thinking, dreaming really, that maybe we could try again. Start a family. His words hung in the air between us, a fragile hope in his eyes. But all I felt was a deep, resounding clarity. You're dreaming, all right, I said, a laugh escaping me. It wasn't cruel, just incredulous. After everything, you honestly believe we can just pick up where we left off? Ethan looked deflated but nodded. I know it's a lot to ask, but yes. I really believe we could make it work. I can't trust you, I said firmly, the laughter gone. Not after everything. I don't even understand how I ever fell for you in the first place. He tried to interrupt, to convince me, but I held up a hand. No. It's over. It was over the moment you chose someone else over your family, over us. I've moved on. I'm happy, truly happy. And you should try to find that happiness too, but it won't be with me. Standing up, I left him sitting there, a mix of regret and realization dawning on his face. As I walked away, a sense of freedom enveloped me. This meeting, this final closure, was the last step in letting go of a past that no longer held me. I stepped out into the sunlight, ready to embrace whatever came next, proud of the woman I had become through the trials I had faced. Life took on a new hue after everything settled down. Receiving my mother's inheritance was bittersweet. It was a reminder of her absence, but also of her love and the values she instilled in me. Remembering the long days she spent in the hospital, I decided to pay it forward. A significant portion of the inheritance went to a charitable foundation dedicated to improving patient care in hospitals. It felt right, like it was what she would have wanted. My days at the dental clinic were as fulfilling as ever. Helping people smile a little brighter gave me a sense of purpose and continuity. Occasionally, snippets of news about Ethan would find their way to me, painting a picture of a life spiraling out of control. Debts, it seemed, had become a constant in his life, a relentless shadow from which he couldn't escape. I won't lie and say there was no part of me that felt vindicated, but gloating over someone's misfortune, especially someone I once shared my life with, felt wrong. I preferred to think of it as the universe balancing the scales, giving out what was deserved, nothing more. Recently, life threw me a curveball, but this time it was a pleasant surprise. At a dental symposium, I reconnected with a colleague I'd only known in passing before. Our casual conversations during the conference revealed a shared passion for vintage rock music, hiking, and, surprisingly, an affinity for spicy food that could make even the bravest souls weep. We started dating not long after, finding comfort in our shared interests and in the understanding that only those who have experienced similar life trials can offer. One evening, over dinner at a cozy restaurant that had become our favorite haunt, he asked me, "How do you manage to stay so positive after everything you've been through?" I paused, considering his question. I guess I realized that holding on to bitterness is like letting someone else live rent-free in your head. Moving on, it's not just about forgetting the past, but about making peace with it. He nodded, a look of admiration in his eyes. I admire that about you. It's not easy. Smiling, I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. Life's too short to dwell on what could have been. It's about what could be. As we left the restaurant, walking hand in hand under the starlit sky, I felt a sense of peace and anticipation for the future. Life was moving on, and so was I, carrying the lessons of the past and the hope for tomorrow. And so, as this chapter of my life closes and a new one begins, I carry with me the strength and wisdom gained from trials faced, knowing that whatever comes my way, I'll face it with a smile. Just like my mother taught me. Alright, let me paint the picture for you. I'm nestled in the heart of a bustling city, tapping away on keyboards, solving tech puzzles, day in and day out. Name's Lily, by the way. 32 and deep in the trenches of singlehood. Not for lack of trying, mind you. I've danced the dating dance more times than I care to admit, each time hoping the music doesn't stop on yet another dud. Dreams of family life and kids? Yeah, got those in spades. Reality? More like a deck stacked with jokers. So, there I was, ranting to my best bud, Jess, over coffee about my latest crash and burn. I'm done, Jess. Maybe I'm meant to be the cool aunt forever, not mom material. Jess, ever the optimist, shot me that I've got the solution look. Why don't you try online dating? Worked for me and Mark, she suggested, sipping her latte like she just dropped the mic. I scoffed. Online dating? That's like dumpster diving for love. But Jess, bless her stubborn heart, wasn't having any of it. Not all dumpsters, Lily. You just gotta find the right one. Give it a shot. Peer pressure's a thing, folks. So, I caved, setting up a profile on one of those dating sites, fully expecting a circus of clowns. At first, it was exactly that. Messages flooded in, each one making me more cynical than the last. Hey, beautiful, wanna see my comic book collection? Or, do you believe in love at first swipe? Just as I was about to chuck my laptop out the window, a message popped up. Not the usual drivel. This one was different. Saw you're into tech. Ever debate the merits of Python over Java over a cup of coffee? Now, that caught my attention. A guy speaking my language. I bit, replying with, only if you're ready to admit Python's superiority in certain applications. Meet Alex. Sales manager by day, charming nerd by, also day. He worked for his mom's company, something that usually would have had me running for the hills, but there was something about him. Easygoing, sociable, and didn't live in his mom's basement, a rarity in my dating history. We met up, and the connection was instant. Coffee turned into dinner, dinner into late-night walks, and before I knew it, 6 months had flown by. Then, out of the blue, he popped the question. Not over a grand gesture, but quietly, sincerely, during one of our night walks. Lily, I can't imagine my life without you. Marry me? I was stunned, elated, and a million other emotions. But mostly, I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. Yes, I whispered, and the city lights seemed to dance just for us that night. So, here I am, engaged to a guy I met on the very platform I mocked, ready to start that dream family. Meeting Alex's mom, Eleanor, felt like being called into the principal's office long after you've graduated. You know you haven't done anything wrong, but the nerves kick in anyway. So there I was, standing on her doorstep, practicing my most charming smile while internally preparing for a siege. Alex squeezed my hand, mistaking my battle readiness for jitters. She's gonna love you, he whispered, but his voice lacked the conviction of a man betting on a sure thing. The door swung open, and there she stood, Eleanor. Not a dragon per se, but she had that look. You know the one, like she could read your life story at a glance and find it lacking. Lily, this is my mom. Mom, Lily. Alex did the intros like he was presenting his science project. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, taking me in. Lily. So, you're the one who's captured my son's heart. Her tone made it sound like I'd done it with dark magic. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Hamilton. Alex speaks very highly of you. She waved off the formalities. Please, call me Eleanor. Let's not stand on ceremony. Her living room was like stepping into a magazine. Not a speck of dust or a pillow out of place. We sat, and the interrogation began. I hear you're in IT. That's a demanding field, she started, casual as if commenting on the weather. Yes, it is. But it's rewarding. I love the challenges, I said, trying to sound confident and not like I was defending my life choices. And how do you find the work-life balance? Alex tells me you're quite ambitious. Was that a hint of disapproval? I manage. We both do. It's about priorities, right? She hummed noncommittally, sipping her tea like a queen, pondering her next move. Alex has always had a varied taste in women. What makes you different? Ouch. That was a jab. I glanced at Alex, hoping for a lifeline, but he was busy examining his tea as if it held the secrets of the universe. I'm not sure I have to be different. I shot back, a little more defensively than intended. I care about Alex. That should count for something. Eleanor leaned in, eyes sharp. Of course, dear. But you must understand, as his mother, it's my job to be cautious. Many have tried to, let's say, take advantage of our family's position. I wasn't sure whether to be offended or amused. With all due respect, Eleanor, I'm not interested in your family's position. I have my own career, my own goals. Alex is not a means to an end for me. There was a brief flicker of something in her eyes, respect, maybe? Or surprise? Hard to tell. Very well, Lily. We shall see. Time does have a way of revealing true intentions, she said, her voice soft, but carrying a weight that felt like a veiled threat. Alex finally found his voice as dessert was served. Mom, Lily's amazing. You'll see. We're good for each other. Eleanor smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I certainly hope so, Alex. For your sake. The rest of the visit passed in a blur of polite conversation and thinly veiled barbs from Eleanor. As we left, Alex was apologetic, whispering assurances that it went better than expected. Better than expected? I couldn't help but laugh, albeit bitterly. Your mom's got a sharp tongue. I felt like I was on trial. Alex winced. She's protective, that's all. Give her time. She'll come around. I nodded, though doubts swirled like storm clouds. Meeting Eleanor was like venturing into a lion's den, armed with nothing but good intentions and a stubborn streak. After tying the knot, Alex and I settled into my apartment, transforming it from mine to ours with every shared laugh, argument, and makeup kiss. Life was good, or at least as good as it gets when you're navigating the newlywed phase alongside dodging the occasional curveball from family. Speaking of family, Eleanor, Alex's mom, threw us a fastball that could knock anyone off their feet. It happened during one of those obligatory family dinners at her place, which was more like a museum than a home. Every fork and knife had to be perfectly aligned, a metaphor for how Eleanor viewed life, I guess. Halfway through dinner, with a smile that was too tight to be genuine, she dropped her bomb. I've been thinking, she began, casting a glance between Alex and me. This apartment living is beneath you, Alex. And Lily, dear, you too, of course. Why don't you move into the mansion with me? There's more than enough room, and it would be beneficial for all of us. I almost choked on my wine. Alex, always the diplomat, responded before I could recover. Mom, that's really generous, but Lily and I are happy in our apartment. It's our space, and we're enjoying making it our own. Eleanor's smile faltered, but she quickly masked it with a sip of her wine. Oh, but think of the advantages. Besides, it would give us a chance to become closer, don't you think? The idea of being closer to Eleanor sent a shiver down my spine. Before I could formulate a polite but firm refusal, Alex squeezed my hand under the table, a silent plea for patience. We really appreciate the offer, Mom, but we've made our decision. We're staying put, he said with finality. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, and I knew this was far from over. But for the moment, she dropped the subject, moving on to less contentious topics like the weather and her garden club's latest drama. A few weeks after that dinner, Eleanor announced she was coming to see our apartment for the first time. Just a friendly visit, she claimed. Friendly my foot. I knew a reconnaissance mission when I saw one. The day arrived, and so did Eleanor, her entrance grandiose as if she were gracing a royal court instead of our humble abode. She greeted us with air kisses, then proceeded to inspect our apartment with the scrutiny of a drill sergeant. "This is it, then," she said, her voice laden with a mix of disappointment and disbelief as she glanced around our living room. "It's quite compact, isn't it?" Alex started to respond, but I cut in, my patience already thinning. "It's cozy, Eleanor. And we love it," she hummed, making her way through our space as if every step pained her. "And this decor, eclectic, isn't it?" A bold choice. I clenched my fists, feeling the anger bubble up. "It's our home, Eleanor. We've put a lot of ourselves into it." Then came the coup de grace. As she peered into our kitchen, her nose wrinkled. "And cleanliness? Is that not a priority for young couples nowadays? Or is this some trend I'm unaware of?" That was the last straw. "Listen, Eleanor," I said, my voice steady but seething. "This trend you're talking about is called living. We might not have a mansion with staff to keep it spotless, but we keep our home clean and welcoming. That's more than enough for us. If you can't respect that, then maybe you should leave." The room went silent. Eleanor looked at Alex, then at me, and for a moment, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she straightened her jacket, her demeanor icy. "Very well. I can see when I'm not wanted. Enjoy your home." With that, she left, her departure leaving a chill in her wake. 2 years into our marriage, and it felt like Alex and I were finally hitting our stride. He was the yin to my yang, helping out around the apartment without me having to nag, always ready with a hug or a kind word. But then, things started to shift, and not for the better. I'd been broaching the topic of kids more and more. I was 34, and that biological clock wasn't just ticking, it was booming like a gong. One evening, I decided to tackle it head-on. "Alex, we need to talk about starting a family." "I'm not getting any younger," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He sighed, the kind of sigh that said he'd rather be anywhere but here. "Lily, we've been over this. It's too early to think about kids. We've got time." Time. That word echoed in my head. Did we really? "Alex, I'm 34. In a few years, it might be too late. Don't you want kids?" He avoided my gaze, focusing instead on some invisible spot on the table. "Of course, I do. Just, not now. Work's been hectic." Hectic was an understatement. Lately, he'd been coming home late, if at all, claiming work was piling up. Weekends were no different, with him often dashing off after mysterious phone calls. One day, curiosity got the better of me. "What's with all the secrecy? Who keeps calling?" He looked cornered, then spilled it. "It's my mom. She's been really ill, having seizures. I've been helping out." I was taken aback. Despite our rocky history, I felt a pang of concern. "I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe I can help? It could be a chance for us to patch things up." His reaction wasn't what I expected. He got defensive, almost angry. "No, she doesn't want to see you. Doesn't want your help." That stung. But it also made me suspicious. Why would he be so hostile about me offering help? After he left, supposedly to aid his ailing mother, I wrestled with whether to call Eleanor directly. My hand hovered over the phone for what felt like hours. In the end, fear of worsening her condition kept me from dialing. Alex's absences grew longer, his contributions to our joint accounts dwindled, leaving me to pick up the slack. Bills, groceries, you name it, I was covering it. And with each passing day, the man I married seemed to slip further away. "Lily, I know things have been tough. I appreciate you handling everything," he said one night, looking worn and tired. "Tough doesn't begin to cover it, Alex. I feel like I'm living with a stranger." "And your mom?" Are you sure there's nothing I can do? He just shook his head, a barrier rising between us. It's better this way. Trust me. Trust. A small word, but damn, it weighed a ton. And right then, I wasn't sure I could. The change in Alex was like a slow leak in a tire, gradual but undeniable. Nights spent alone in our bed became the norm, his side growing colder with each passing day. The sound of his voice was replaced by murmurs into his phone, always stepping out of the room, always whispering. "It's Mom," he'd say. "She needs me." But the gaps in our bank account told a different story. Suddenly, I'm playing the role of the breadwinner, juggling bills and groceries, watching my savings dwindle like ice in the sun. Over coffee, I vented to Jess, my go-to for unfiltered advice. "He's hardly home, Jess. And when he is, it's like he's a million miles away. Plus, our finances are a mess." Jess raised an eyebrow, her skepticism palpable. "Girl, this sounds shady. Have you thought about digging deeper? Maybe hire a PI?" She half-joked, a smirk playing on her lips. I laughed, brushing off the idea. Yet, it lingered, gnawing at the back of my mind, a seed of doubt planted firmly in soil fertile with suspicion. Then, out of nowhere, Eleanor, the last person I expected a call from, reached out, suggesting we meet at a cafe. Curiosity piqued and desperation for answers swirling within me. I agreed. The Eleanor I knew was a fortress, her health the moat keeping us at bay. Yet, here she was, extending an olive branch. What could she possibly want to tell me? The morning air felt heavy as I walked into the cafe, a storm brewing in my heart. Eleanor sat there, looking every bit the picture of health, not the frail image painted by Alex's stories. As I sat down, her eyes locked onto mine, a sternness in them that immediately set me on edge. "Why are you stopping Alex from seeing me, his own mother?" she demanded right off the bat. I blinked, taken aback. "What? That's not true. Alex told me he's been with you almost every day, taking care of you because you're sick." The color drained from her face, then came back in a flush of anger. "Call him, Lily. Let's hear what he says about his whereabouts right now." My hand shook as I dialed Alex's number, my heart thumping loud in my chest. "Alex, where are you right now?" I asked, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. "I'm on my way to the hospital with Mom. She's had another episode," he replied, his tone hurried and anxious. The words hung in the air, a lie so blatant it stung. I ended the call, turning to face Eleanor, who offered a sad smile and placed a gentle hand on my arm. "Tell me everything, Lily," she urged softly. So, I spilled it all, the months of lies, the nights alone, the drained bank account. Each word felt like a betrayal, not just from Alex, but from the life I thought we were building together. Eleanor listened, her face a mask of sadness. "He told me you didn't want to see me, that you were too busy with clinic visits, because you couldn't conceive." I stared at her, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. "That's a lie. All of it. What's really going on, Eleanor?" She sighed, a sound heavy with disappointment. "Alex has always been restless. Always looking for something more. I threatened to cut him off unless he settled down, found a good woman, and started a family. I thought he'd changed when he brought you into our lives." The revelation hit me hard. All this time, our marriage, our plans for the future, it was just a performance for Alex. A way to keep his lifestyle without losing his inheritance. Eleanor's next words were a mix of anger and regret. "He's been seeing other women, Lily." I didn't want to believe it, but it's true. The cafe around us faded into a blur as her words sank in. Betrayal, deeper than I'd ever known, coursed through me. The man I loved, the life I'd envisioned, it was all built on lies. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We confront him, together. He needs to face the consequences of his actions," Eleanor said firmly, her resolve clear. "How about we really see what he's been up to? Maybe hire someone to dig a little deeper?" I was hesitant at first, but the anger bubbling inside me overrode any doubts. Let's do it, I agreed, feeling a mix of excitement and fear at the prospect of facing the ugly truth head-on. The detective we hired was a pro, unearthing details about Alex that made my skin crawl. He had been leading a lavish lifestyle on our dime, wining and dining various women, all while spinning U.S. tales of family duty and illness. But the real kicker came when we got audio of Alex with one of his girlfriends, mocking Eleanor and me for believing his lies. "They're just a couple of naive bugs, easily fooled," he laughed on the tape. That was the last straw. Eleanor and I, now united in our quest for justice, decided it was time for a confrontation. Armed with the evidence, we ambushed him at a bar downtown, where he was supposed to meet his latest fling. The look on his face when he saw us together was worth every penny we'd paid the detective. Eleanor was the first to let loose, her voice rising above the music and chatter. "You're a disgrace, Alex. I never thought I'd see the day my own son would sink this low. Cheating, lying, and stealing from your own family." Her words were like bullets, and with each one, Alex seemed to shrink a little more. The crowd in the bar had gone silent, all eyes on us. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "And you," I said, facing Alex with all the fury I felt. "You're going to pay for what you've done. Not just to me, but to your mother, to our marriage. I've got the divorce papers right here." I slapped them down on the table in front of him, along with the storage unit receipt. "Everything you own is in a box to the left, buddy. Consider yourself served." Alex was speechless, his face pale, eyes darting between me and his mother. I can explain," he stammered, but Eleanor cut him off. "Save it. You're cut off, Alex. No more money, no support. You've made your bed, now lie in it." Her voice was ice cold, the final nail in the coffin of their relationship. As we left the bar, the music started up again, but the night had lost its buzz for me. What mattered was the sense of closure, however bitter it tasted. Eleanor and I walked out together, not as enemies, but as allies, bonded by our shared betrayal. "We'll get through this," she said, squeezing my hand. "Yeah," I replied, looking back one last time at the man I once loved, now a stranger. "We will." After the whole mess unraveled and the truth came out about Alex, things moved pretty fast. He ended up having to pay up for his lies, a kind of compensation for the heartache and chaos he caused. The divorce papers were signed, no looking back. And Eleanor, well, she cut him off completely, sticking to her word. It was a tough outcome for him, but he made his bed. Now, life's taken a turn I didn't see coming. Eleanor and we sort of bonded through this storm. Funny how life throws you together with the most unexpected people. And here's the kicker, I'm expecting a baby. Yeah, amidst the chaos, a new life started growing, and Eleanor's over the moon about her upcoming grandchild. Just the other day, we were sitting in her living room, the one that used to intimidate me, planning for the baby's arrival. "You know, Lily," Eleanor said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard. "This baby, he's going to have the best of everything. We'll make sure of it." I couldn't help but smile, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. "I can't believe I'm doing this. A baby, Eleanor. It's going to be a whole new adventure." Eleanor chuckled, that tough exterior melting away. "You're stronger than you think, Lily. And you're not alone. We're in this together." It's strange how things turn out. The person I once thought of as an adversary is now one of my biggest supporters. Life's full of surprises like that. As for Alex, well, he's out of the picture, facing the consequences of his actions. I've moved on, focusing on the future, a future that's looking brighter every day, especially with a little one on the way. Eleanor's already spoiling him rotten, buying baby clothes, toys, and planning the nursery. "He's going to be a fighter, just like his mom," she says, and I believe her. So, here I am, embarking on a new chapter. It's scary, sure, but I've got Eleanor by my side, And a little boy on the way who's going to know all about love, strength, and resilience. We talked about the future, about moving forward. Eleanor was keen on supporting a charity project for women who had gone through similar betrayals. I want to do something meaningful, she said. Help others rebuild, just like we're doing. I love that idea, I replied, feeling a spark of excitement for the first time in months. Count me in. It's time to turn this mess into a message. My name is Chloe, and if you were to ask anyone about me, they'd probably say I'm the quiet type, always in the background. I work as a lab assistant, which suits me fine because it means less chit-chat and more focus on the details. Life's pretty routine: work, home, and the occasional outing with my friend Lisa, who's about as loud and lively as they come. Tonight, she somehow convinced me to tag along to one of her infamous house parties. Chloe, you gotta stop hiding in your shell. It's just a few friends, and hey, you might even have fun, she had said, practically pulling me out of my apartment. As soon as we walked in, the difference between us was glaring. Lisa was in her element, her laughter filling the room as she mingled effortlessly. I, on the other hand, found myself plastered against the nearest wall, clutching a soda like a lifeline. The music was too loud, the crowd too much, but there I was, trying to blend into the wallpaper. Hey, you made it! Lisa shouted over the music as she darted back to me, a guy trailing behind her. Chloe, this is Tom. Tom, meet my best bud, Chloe. Tom was your typical good-looking guy, tall with a smile that probably got him out of trouble more times than it should. Nice to meet you, Chloe. Can I get you something stronger than soda? Maybe loosen you up a bit? He joked, nodding at my drink. I managed a smile. No, thanks. I'm good with this. Lisa winked at me before being swept away by another group of friends, leaving me with Tom. Awkward didn't even start to cover it. So, Chloe, Lisa tells me you're the brains of the operation at your work. A scientist, right? Tom tried to start a conversation, leaning against the wall next to me. Lab assistant, I corrected him, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. I'm not really the brain, more like the hands. Tom chuckled. Modesty, huh? That's rare. We somehow stumbled into a real conversation. Tom was surprisingly easy to talk to, and as the night wore on, I found myself sharing little bits about my life, my love for quiet weekends, and my secret passion for old detective novels. He listened, really listened, and by the time the party started to thin out, I was actually laughing, the genuine kind that bubbles up without permission. You know, you're nothing like I expected from Lisa's stories. You're cooler, Tom said, his tone sincere. I raised an eyebrow, surprised by his comment. And what exactly did Lisa tell you? That you were shy, kinda introverted. But you're just chill, not uptight. It's refreshing. His words, oddly enough, didn't feel patronizing. They felt like a compliment, and from someone like Tom, it meant a bit more than it should have. Thanks, I guess. You're not too bad yourself, for a party animal, I teased back, realizing that I didn't want the night to end just yet. Party animal, huh? I might quote you on that, he laughed, pulling out his phone. Let me get your number. We should hang out, maybe somewhere quieter where you don't need to shout over the music. I hesitated for a moment, the old fears whispering that it was a bad idea, but then I typed my number into his phone. Okay, but if you make me go to another party, we're going to have a problem, I warned him. Deal. No parties. Maybe just a coffee or something. He promised with a smile that made me think that maybe, just maybe, stepping out of my comfort zone wasn't such a bad idea after all. Just a few months after the party where I met Tom, things had gotten pretty serious between us. I remember it was a chilly evening in late autumn when he popped the question. We were walking through the park, leaves crunching under our feet, when he suddenly stopped and looked at me with those eyes that seemed to see right through to my soul. Chloe, I've been thinking. Tom started, fumbling a bit, which was not like him at all. He was usually so smooth. I don't want to spend another day without knowing you're officially mine. Will you marry me? He pulled out a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple but beautiful ring. I nodded, my voice a mere whisper. Yes, I'll marry you. The joy on his face was unmistakable. We spent the rest of the evening talking about our future, making plans that seemed like distant dreams coming to life. But the real test came when we decided it was time to meet his parents. Tom had mentioned his folks a few times before, but he always kept the details light. When the day came, we drove out to their place in the suburbs. It was a large, imposing house that screamed of old money and pride. Tom squeezed my hand as we rang the doorbell, giving me a reassuring look. His mom, Mrs. White, opened the door. Her smile was polite but didn't reach her eyes. Thomas, you're here. And this must be Chloe, she said, her voice smooth but cool. Mrs. White led us into a lavish sitting room where Mr. White was waiting. He was a stern-looking man with a sharp gaze that felt like it was sizing me up. So, Chloe, Tom tells us you work in a laboratory. That must be interesting, Mr. White said, his tone making it clear he was less than impressed. It's rewarding work, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the judgment I could feel weighing down each word. We were quite surprised to hear about the engagement, Mrs. White chimed in. Weren't we, dear? She looked at her husband, who nodded stiffly. Yes, quite unexpected. You see, Chloe, we want what's best for Tom, and we hope you understand that, Mr. White added, his words heavy with unspoken implications. Tom jumped in. Mom, Dad, I love Chloe, and she makes me happy. That's what matters, right? Of course, dear, but you must think practically too, Mrs. White countered, her eyes cold and calculating. We would like you both to consider signing a prenuptial agreement. It's just a formality, really, to ensure both your futures. I was torn. My heart ached at the formality of it all, at the cold businesslike approach to what should have been a joyful occasion. But I loved Tom, and if this was what it took to be with him, maybe it was worth it. If you think it's best, I said finally, trying to mask the hurt in my voice. We think it's for the best, Mr. White affirmed, handing us a folder with documents. Have a look and let us know your thoughts. The drive back was quiet. I kept thinking about the papers in my lap. But love, I figured, was worth a shot, even if it meant signing a piece of paper to prove it. It was a crisp morning in early spring when we tied the knot. The ceremony was to be held in a small local church with just a few close friends and family members. I remember standing in front of a small mirror in a modest white dress that Lisa had helped me pick out, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Girl, you look stunning. Tom won't know what hit him, Lisa exclaimed as she adjusted my veil. Her energy was infectious, and for a moment, it eased my nerves. Yeah, I just hope everything goes smoothly, I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Don't sweat it. It's your day. Just focus on you and Tom, she advised, giving me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. The ceremony itself was short and sweet. Tom looked handsome in his suit, and when he saw me walking down the aisle, his smile was all the assurance I needed. We exchanged vows, simple yet heartfelt. When the officiant pronounced us man and wife, and Tom kissed me, there was polite applause. It all felt right, despite everything. At the reception, which was really just a small gathering at a nearby restaurant, Tom's parents were distant. Tom's father, Mr. White, made a short toast. We're here to celebrate Tom and Chloe, he began, his voice devoid of warmth. May your union bring you the happiness you seek. It was so formal and cold that it might as well have been a business transaction. But I focused on the people who were genuinely happy for us, like Lisa, who was already on her third glass of champagne and narrating how we'd met to anyone who would listen. The day ended, and with it, our simple but meaningful wedding wrapped up. We drove to our new home, Tom's place, where I'd move in. It was a nice house, not too far from his parents, which I soon found out meant his mom, Mrs. White, was over a lot. Each time she visited, she made it a point to casually mention how everything in the house was Tom's and how, in case of a divorce, I couldn't claim any of it. "Remember, Chloe, none of this is yours," she'd say, her voice dripping with a faux kindness that made my skin crawl. I would just smile awkwardly, trying to hide how uncomfortable it made me feel. Tom would laugh it off every time, hugging me slightly. "Mom's just joking around. Don't take her seriously," he'd chuckle, but his laughter never quite reached his eyes. It was clear this was her way of reminding me of my place, making sure I knew that I was an outsider. But I kept hoping things would get better, that maybe, just maybe, Tom would eventually see how his mother's words were chipping away at our newlywed bliss. I tried to make the best of things, focusing on setting up our space, hoping it could feel like ours, not just Tom's. But no matter how hard I tried, Tom's parents, especially his mom, Mrs. White, made it difficult. "Chloe, dear, why don't you rearrange these dishes? They should be organized better," Mrs. White would say during her frequent visits, her tone patronizing as she inspected the kitchen cabinets that I had just tidied up. I would force a polite smile, my hands tightening around the edge of the countertop. "Of course, I'll take care of it," I'd respond, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. Tom usually shrugged off his mother's comments. "She just likes things a certain way, you know how it is," he'd tell me, dismissing it all too quickly. But it wasn't just about the dishes. It felt like nothing I did was right. One evening, while Tom and I were trying to enjoy a quiet dinner, his dad, Mr. White, dropped by unannounced. "Watching your spending, I hope. Remember, it's Tom's money paying for all this," he commented nonchalantly as he looked over the spread on the table. I bit my lip, feeling the sting of his words. "We're careful with our budget," I said, keeping my voice even. But the digs didn't stop there. Every chance they got, Tom's parents reminded me of my place. "Just make sure you keep the house clean for Tom. He works so hard, he shouldn't have to worry about coming home to a mess," Mrs. White would say, her words laced with a venom disguised as concern. And it wasn't just behind closed doors. Even in public, they had a way of belittling me. At a family gathering, I overheard Mrs. White talking to a relative. "You know, Chloe doesn't earn much. Pretty much lives off you, doesn't she, Tom?" The interference from Tom's parents didn't stop at comments. They started acting like the house was theirs too. They'd come over, flop down on the sofa, and demand, "Chloe, make us some coffee, will you? Or we're out of snacks, could you run to the store?" It was as if I had become less of a family member and more of a maid. And Tom? He had changed. He used to be caring and attentive, but now he joined in their laughter. One day, while folding laundry, he said, "You do fold these all wrong, Chloe. Just how my mom showed you, remember?" His tone was light, but the criticism stung sharply. His parents laughed along with him, and Mr. White added, "She's got to learn somehow. You can't baby her forever, Tom." The worst part was how Tom criticized everything about me, from the way I managed the house to my choice of clothes. "You're going out in that?" he'd ask, his look one of disapproval as he eyed my casual jeans and t-shirt. I felt like I was losing not just the battle to win over his parents, but also the man I thought I had married. The man who had once looked at me with love now scrutinized me with the same critical eyes as his parents. Each day grew harder, the atmosphere at home more suffocating. I started to dread waking up in the morning, knowing I'd face another day of veiled insults and open disdain. The stress of living under constant scrutiny and disdain had taken its toll on me. I began losing weight, my nights were restless, and my days were long battles with anxiety. It all came to a head one morning at work when I collapsed right there among the test tubes and beakers in my lab. I woke up in the hospital, the sterile white of the room blinding me at first. I felt a dull ache in my stomach, and my head was spinning. As I tried to sit up, a nurse rushed over. "Take it easy, Chloe. You gave us quite a scare," she said, helping me adjust the pillows behind my back. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You passed out at work," They brought you in with severe dehydration and stress-related symptoms, she explained, checking the 4-drip that was hooked to my arm. I sighed, the reality of my situation settling in. The door to my room opened, and Lisa walked in, her face etched with concern. "Chloe, I heard what happened. Are you okay?" She rushed to my side, grabbing my hand. "I guess I'm not," I replied, trying to muster a smile. "This is ridiculous, Chloe. You can't go on like this," Lisa said, her voice stern, filled with worry. I knew she was right, but the thought of going back to that house, to face Tom and his parents again, filled me with dread. I just nodded, not trusting my voice. The next day, as I lay there flipping through a magazine, a man in a suit appeared at my doorway. "Chloe Roberts?" he asked, stepping into the room. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" I was puzzled, I didn't recognize him. "I'm Mr. Harris, a notary. I have some unexpected news for you. You've been named as the sole heiress to your great-uncle's estate. He passed away last month, and it seems you are to inherit $20 million, he announced, holding out a stack of documents. I blinked, sure that I had misheard him. "I'm sorry, come again? Did you say $20 million? "Yes, Miss Roberts. It's all here in the documents. Your great-uncle left everything to you," Mr. Harris confirmed, handing me the papers. I was in shock. But I barely knew him. Nevertheless, he remembered you. "If you have any questions or need assistance with the inheritance process, I'm here to help," he offered. The news was overwhelming. As Mr. Harris left, my mind raced with the implications. My phone beeped with a text from Tom, the first since I'd been hospitalized. "Hey, heard about your uncle. Sorry for your loss. How are you feeling?" The message read. I stared at the screen, my emotions a tangled mess. Here I was, suddenly wealthy, and yet, I felt more alone than ever. "Getting better," I texted back, not quite ready to share the news of the inheritance. Later that evening, as I lay in the hospital bed, the weight of the day's revelations pressing down on me, I made a decision. I couldn't go back to my old life, not now. With this inheritance, I had the means to change everything. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. I was still processing the shock when Tom and his parents came to visit. They hadn't been by since I was admitted, which spoke volumes. But today, they were all smiles and concern. Tom walked in first, his parents trailing behind him. "Hey, Chloe, how are you feeling today?" he asked, his voice a tad too sweet. I adjusted myself up in bed. "Better, thanks," I replied, watching them carefully. Mrs. White came over to my side, her voice dripping with a concern that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Chloe, we've been so worried about you," she said, her hand brushing mine. "That's kind of you," I said, pulling my hand back subtly. Mr. White stood at the foot of my bed, his arms crossed. "Yes, well, we're family. We take care of our own," he added, though it felt like a rehearsed line. Tom sat down next to me, taking my hand again. "We just want to make sure you're taken care of, that's all," he said, squeezing my hand. I nodded, feeling the weight of their stares. They seemed unusually attentive. I appreciate that. As their visit dragged on, their questions began to veer towards my health in a way that felt more invasive than concerned. "So, when do the doctors say you can leave the hospital?" Mrs. White asked, peering at me closely. "Soon, I hope. I'm starting to feel a lot better," I replied, wary of revealing too much. After a few more minutes of strained conversation, they left, promising to return soon. I lay back, a sense of unease settling over me. Their visit felt off, their questions too pointed. Curious and cautious, after they left, I decided to see for myself what they were up to. I quietly got dressed and followed them at a distance as they walked toward the parking lot. Hidden by the corner of the building, I overheard their conversation. "That stupid cow doesn't know what's coming," Tom laughed crudely. "She thinks we care about her? This is all just until we get that money," And make sure she gets pregnant soon, Tom. If she has a kid, she won't leave. Then we're really in control, Mrs. White added viciously. Hearing them speak so callously, plotting to trap me further, was the final straw. My heart pounded with a mix of anger and resolve. I had seen their true colors, and it was uglier than I could have imagined. I slipped back to my ward unnoticed, my mind racing. Their treachery was clear, and my path forward was too. For perhaps the first time in my life, I knew I had to stand up for myself. I wasn't going to be their victim any longer. When I was discharged from the hospital, the idea of going back home filled me with a mix of dread and determination. As I walked through the door, I saw Tom and his parents sitting in the living room, their faces lit up with forced smiles. Mrs. White even went as far as to cook my favorite dish, spaghetti carbonara, which sat steaming on the dining table. The sight was almost comical, her trying so hard to play the doting mother-in-law. It felt like a scene from a bad play. Tom rushed up to me, his smile a little too eager. "Chloe, you're back. We missed you so much," he said, pulling me into a hug that I didn't return. "Thanks, Tom," I said, pulling away gently. I glanced around at the staged setting, my resolve hardening. As we sat down to eat, the tension was palpable. They were trying too hard to act normal, but I could see the impatience flickering in Tom's eyes. It didn't take long before he dove straight to the point. "So, Chloe, when do you think you'll get the inheritance? There's so much we can do with it," he asked, trying to sound casual, but failing miserably. I put down my fork, looking him straight in the eye. "Tom, it doesn't concern you." "Because I'm filing for divorce," I stated calmly, sliding the divorce papers across the table towards him. The room went dead silent for a moment before a terrible scream erupted from Mrs. White. "Chloe, have you lost your mind? Think about what you're doing." Tom's face turned from shock to desperation. "Chloe, please, I love you. We can fix this. Don't throw away our marriage over a misunderstanding," he pleaded, his voice cracking. But I was done listening to lies. "A misunderstanding?" I echoed sharply. "Calling me a stupid cow behind my back is not a misunderstanding." "I heard everything, Tom. Everything." Mrs. White's face turned red, her anger barely contained. "You ungrateful girl. We'll sue you for half of that inheritance. You'll see." I reached into my bag and pulled out a copy of the prenuptial agreement. "Actually, you won't," I said, tossing it on the table. "This says otherwise. You can't touch my inheritance." Tom and his parents stared at the document, the color draining from their faces. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I found a small apartment in a quiet part of town where the mornings were filled with the sounds of birds, not bickering. It wasn't just a new place, it was a fresh start. I spent the first week just settling in, buying a few pieces of furniture, some plants, making it mine. The silence was a stark contrast to the constant tension I had lived with, and I loved it. It was during these days of newfound solitude that I truly began to appreciate the peace I had been missing. One Saturday morning, I was out on my balcony, enjoying a cup of coffee when Lisa came by. She burst through the door with her usual flair, holding a box of pastries. "Chloe, this place is fantastic," she exclaimed, setting the box on my new kitchen counter and hugging me tightly. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I have in years, honestly," I replied, pouring her a cup of coffee. "It's like I can finally think straight without all the noise." Lisa chuckled as she sipped her coffee. "I told you, you just needed to get out of that madhouse." "So, what's next for our free woman?" she asked, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. "I've been thinking about that a lot," I said, leaning against the counter. "Right now, I'm just enjoying the quiet, planning my next steps. In the future, I will buy myself a big house and do charity work." As the weeks passed, I reveled in my independence, meeting with a notary for registration of inheritance. But, as expected, the peace didn't last forever. One evening, my phone rang, pulling me away from a book I was reading. It was Tom. Chloe, please, can we talk? I've been thinking, Anne. Tom, there's nothing left to say. I interrupted, my voice firm yet weary. Just hear me out. I miss you, and I was wrong. He pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. I'm sorry for everything. Can we try again? Tom, it's over. We can't undo what's been done. You need to accept that, I replied, ending the call. Not long after, his mother started calling. Each message left on my voicemail was more desperate and angry than the last. You ungrateful girl. After everything we've done for you, she shouted in one of the messages. I erased them without a second thought. It wasn't long before Tom told me that he and his parents were arguing a lot. He blamed them for insisting on the prenuptial agreement, which now protected me from their greed. Each call, each desperate plea, only affirmed my decision to leave. I was moving forward, not backward. The quarrels and chaos of that family were no longer my circus, not my monkeys. I've always been the type to enjoy my own company. Name's Kimberly, 30, and teaching physics at a local college. Family, marriage, all that jazz? Not really on my radar. Got this nice little place all to myself, a legacy from my granddad. It's my slice of peace in this loud world. So, there I was, hitting the pavement in the park for my morning run, when this scene unfolds right in front of me. A guy, not watching where he's going, takes a spectacular dive and his phone goes flying. The thing hits the ground and, bam, it's a goner. Shattered screen, bits everywhere, the whole 9 yards. He's cussing up a storm, face all twisted in frustration. Clearly, the phone's the least of his worries. Looks like he's about to tear his hair out. Great, just great. This is all I needed today. He groans, staring at the remains of his phone like it personally offended him. I slow down, kinda hovering. Not sure why. Maybe it's the look of utter defeat on his face. You need to borrow a phone? I ask, keeping it casual. He looks up, kinda surprised someone's talking to him. Yeah, that'd be great, actually. Need to call my folks, tell them I botched up something important. I unhook my phone from my armband and hand it over. Don't sweat it. Just make it quick, yeah? Sure, thanks a ton, he says, and he's on the phone in a heartbeat, pacing a small circle as he talks. His voice is all polite now, a total switch from the cursing fit seconds ago. Listen, I've had a bit of a mishap. He's glancing at me, a silent plea for a bit more time. I nod, letting him know it's all right. Finishing up, he hands back my phone with a sheepish look. Thanks. I owe you one. I'm Jack, by the way. Kimberly, and forget about it. Just try not to smash it next time, yeah? I say, half joking. He chuckles, running a hand through his hair. Deal. I'll make it up to you. Coffee, sometime? I raise an eyebrow. You planning on throwing the coffee at the ground too? He laughs, a genuine, hearty sound. Promise I'm less clumsy with coffee cups. What do you say? I consider it for a moment. Not usually my thing, chatting up strangers, but something about this feels different. Alright, Jack. Coffee. But if you're late, I'm leaving. I say with a smirk. That coffee with Jack? It turned out to be the first of many. Something about him made me toss my stranger danger manual out the window. He was easy to talk to, with a laugh that made you want to join in, even if the joke was lame. We found this little hole-in-the-wall cafe, the kind where the coffee's strong enough to put hair on your chest and the owner knows everyone by name. We became regulars, our conversations stretching from physics to philosophy to the downright ridiculous. So, you're telling me, if you could, you'd teach physics to cats? Jack asked me one day, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. I took a sip of my coffee, playing along. Absolutely. Imagine the breakthroughs. Schrodinger's cat would have a whole new meaning. He laughed, shaking his head. You're nuts. You know that, right? Takes one to know one. I shot back, smiling. Things with Jack just clicked. It wasn't long before our coffee dates turned into dinner dates, movie nights, and lazy Sundays spent doing nothing together. It was easy, comfortable, and frighteningly quick. One evening, as we were closing down the cafe with our lingering goodbye, Jack turned serious, something I'd come to learn meant he had something important on his mind. "Kimberly," he started, hesitating a bit. "I've been thinking. We're great together, aren't we?" I nodded, curious about where this was leading. "Well, I was wondering. What do you think about making this a forever thing?" My heart skipped. "Forever thing? You mean, like marriage?" "Yeah, marriage," he confirmed, his voice firm but his eyes searching mine for any sign of hesitation. I paused, not because I doubted my feelings, but because the gravity of the decision weighed on me. Yet, looking into his hopeful eyes, I found my answer. "Yes, Jack. Let's do it. Let's get married." The whirlwind that was our engagement sped by, and before I knew it, wedding bells were practically ringing in my ears. But, there was this one little hiccup, before we could say our I dos. Jack's folks wanted to meet me. No biggie, right? Wrong. The meet and greet was at their place, which was fancy enough to make you think twice about where you sat. They were polite, but had this way of looking at you like they were trying to read the fine print on your soul. "So, Kimberly," his dad starts, voice smooth like he's practiced this speech a few times. "Jack tells us you're a teacher. Physics, was it?" "Yeah, that's right," I reply, keeping my tone friendly but guarded. "And you live in that lovely little house by the park?" "Quite the inheritance," his mom chimes in, her eyes sharp, trying to pin me down. I just nod, sensing where this is heading but not wanting to jump the gun. "It's just that our Jack is quite the successful businessman, you know. We're just a tad concerned, no offense, dear, that some might be more interested in his financial stability," his dad says, dancing around the real accusation. I couldn't help but laugh, the absurdity of it all bubbling up. "Trust me, I've got my own, thanks. Not here for a free ride." Their faces tighten, not expecting my blunt honesty, or maybe they did, and it was all part of the test. "Well, in that case," his mom says, pulling out this document from nowhere, "we'd feel more at ease if you two considered a prenuptial agreement." "Sure," I shrugged, taking the paper. "Makes sense to me. I like knowing where I stand. Plus, my house isn't up for grabs." Their surprise was almost worth the awkward tension. I guess they weren't used to straightforward answers. Jack seemed relieved, squeezing my hand under the table like he was saying, "Thanks for not bolting." So, we signed their precious prenup, sealing the deal that what's mine is mine and what's his is his. Fair's fair, but the taste it left in my mouth was sour. Made me wonder what kind of family I was marrying into. Living with Jack in my granddad's house started off as a dream. We'd laugh over burnt toast, dance in the living room to no music, and make plans for every inch of the garden. But, like a storm rolling in slow, things got cloudy, then downright stormy. And wouldn't you know it, the storm had a name, Jack's parents. These two could give lessons in arrogance. From day one, it was like I signed up for a third and fourth roommate who had a key but never heard of rent. They'd swan into our place like it was a diner, feet up, waiting for the special of the day. And when they hinted they wanted to go on this fancy cruise but their wallets were too thin, they looked at me like I was the bank. The day I told them no, you'd think I'd declared war. They threw a fit, calling me stingy, saying I hoarded my cash like some dragon sitting on gold. Word gets around, and soon Jack's asking why I'm not more generous with his folks. Generous? Jack, they practically live off us as it is. I snapped back one night, after his parents had left our sofa and our fridge emptier than promises. Their family, Kim. We're supposed to help out, he argued, missing the point by a mile. Helping's one thing. Being taken for a ride's another. Your folks think my money's theirs to spend. That's not happening. Jack went all quiet then, the kind of silence that's louder than shouting. His parents did the same but in their way, by suddenly vanishing. No drop-bys, no calls, nothing. They were offended because I wouldn't fund their holiday spree. Called me greedy behind my back, said I was living too tight, all because I wouldn't open up my granddad's safe to splurge on them. Ah, the safe. That hulking piece of metal was more than a place to stash away a few valuable bits and bobs, it was a slice of history, a connection to my granddad. But to them? Just a vault they hadn't cracked. The calm month without Jack's folks was like the quiet before the storm. It was a Tuesday, the kind of day you don't expect anything out of the ordinary. I was late coming home from work, bogged down with papers and the remnants of a headache that wouldn't quit. Walking in, I found Jack's parents parked on our sofa, remote in hand, flipping through channels like they owned the place. Evening, I managed, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "Oh, there she is. We were wondering if you'd join us tonight," his mom said, without looking away from the TV. I glanced at Jack, hoping for some backup, but he was engrossed in something on his laptop. Sighing, I headed to the kitchen, only to find they'd helped themselves to leftovers I was planning to make into dinner. That was it. I was done playing nice. "Okay, listen up," I said, striding back into the living room. "This is not a hotel, and I am not the maid." Jack looked up, startled, while his parents finally paused their channel surfing. "What's gotten into you?" his dad asked, frowning. "I'm tired," I shot back. "Tired of coming home to find you two camped out here, eating my food, and treating this place like it's yours." "It's not." The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop, or in this case, the tick of the clock, marking the moment everything changed. His mom stood, smoothing her skirt. "Well, I never. Here we thought we were family, but clearly, we were mistaken." "That's not what I'm saying, and you know it. I'm just asking for some respect, some space." I tried to explain, but the look on her face told me she wasn't buying it. Jack's dad chimed in, his voice cold. "Seems like someone's true colors are showing. We just wanted to be close to our son, but apparently, that's too much for you." I looked at Jack, searching for some sign of support, but he was torn, caught between us and them. "Maybe it's best if we leave," his mom said, her voice laced with hurt I wasn't sure was entirely genuine. "Maybe that is best," I agreed, more to myself than anyone else. They left, and with them, the false pretense of one big happy family. Jack and I stood in the silent aftermath, the rift between us wider than ever. The breaking point hit like a wrecking ball. Jack had always been a bit of a mama's boy, but I never figured it would get this bad. His folks? They had their hooks in deep, and Jack danced to every tune they played. It wouldn't have been so bad if it stopped there, but no, Jack started treating me like I was part of the staff in my own house. "Hey, can you whip up something nice for dinner?" "I'm starving," Jack would say, dropping his bag by the door like he owned the place. "Jack, I've been on my feet all day, teaching and grading. How about you cook tonight?" I'd reply, trying not to let my irritation bubble over. But instead of understanding, he'd huff, puff, and make it seem like I was the one being unreasonable. And let's not even start on the Fridays he'd roll in past midnight, reeking of booze, with that "what's the big deal" look plastered on his face. One evening, I'd had enough. "We need to talk, Jack. This isn't working." He just stood there, swaying slightly, with that clueless look of his. "What's not working?" "Us, Jack. Us. Your parents treat this place like a free hotel, you treat me like I'm here to serve, and I'm tired. All the time tired." He could have said a lot of things then. Could have apologized, could have promised to change. But no, he got all defensive, as if I was attacking him out of the blue. "That's not fair, Kim. You knew what my family was like," he shot back. "Yeah, and I thought I was marrying you, not signing up to be the family doormat," I snapped. That was the moment. The moment when the last thread snapped. We looked at each other, really looked, and saw the chasm between us. too wide to bridge, too deep to fill. I think we should get a divorce, I said, the words tasting bitter. Jack's reaction was a mixture of shock and relief. It was clear this had been a long time coming for both of us. But when he told his folks, the glee in their voices was something else. We always knew she wasn't right for you, son. Good riddance, and thank heavens for that prenup. His mom had chirped over speakerphone, her voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful. Jack packed his bags that night, his movements mechanical. There was no dramatic goodbye, no tearful plea for reconsideration. Just the soft zip of a suitcase and the click of a door. Life's funny, you know? Just when you think you've hit rock bottom, fate throws you a curveball. For me, that curveball was a lottery ticket, a last-minute buy on a whim because, hey, why not? My life was already a mess, might as well throw a couple of bucks at a dream. The morning I found out I won, it was like any other, except my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I thought it was a mistake, a practical joke maybe. But no, there it was, my ticket, my numbers, staring back at me from the screen, winners through and through. So there I was, staring at the lottery ticket in my hand, the kind of stunned where you can't decide if you want to laugh or cry. $3 million. It felt like a joke, considering the mess my life was at that moment. Divorce papers not yet signed, and my soon-to-be ex and his folks were nothing but a headache I couldn't shake. The universe must have a sense of humor, because the next thing I know, Jack's car pulls up. Him and his folks, all smiles and fake warmth, come barging into my place like it's some family reunion. Kim, darling, we heard the news. What a blessing. His mom starts, laying it on thick. Let's put all this unpleasantness behind us, We're family. Jack chimes in, all hopeful. Yeah, babe, think about it. We can start fresh, really make a go of it this time. I couldn't help it, I laughed. Not the happy kind, but the kind that's sharp around the edges. Start fresh? With what, your folks running the show? No thanks. I'm good. Then Jack, oh Jack, he gets this look, like he's been wronged, and says, come on, Kim. That's cold. You know I deserve half of that money. It's only fair. Fair? Let's talk about fair, Jack. You and your parents treating me and my place like some kind of free-for-all, and now you want half of my win? Not happening. His face went all kinds of red, anger, embarrassment, take your pick. His parents, too, looked like they'd swallowed lemons, all puckered and sour. According to our prenup, that money is mine. All mine. You got that? I said, holding his gaze, feeling a kind of power I hadn't felt in a long time. He sputtered, looking to his folks for backup, but I wasn't done. And just so we're clear, this ticket, I waved it in the air, before sliding it into my safe, is staying right here, under reliable protection. Their eyes, oh man, their eyes were like cartoon characters, almost popping out of their heads. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Jack tried to argue more, but I cut him off. No, Jack. It's over. This ticket is my ticket out of this mess. Our mess. And you're not getting a dime. They left after that, not much else they could say. The door clicking shut behind them sounded like the end of an era. My era of playing the good wife, the understanding partner. Then I rang up my sister, spilling the beans about my sudden windfall. We spent hours on the phone, dreaming big, trips abroad, fancy cars, you name it. The kind of chat that leaves your cheeks aching from smiling too much. And guess what? I added, as our call was winding down. Jack's already got his eyes on the prize, acting like we're suddenly best buddies again. My sister cackled on the other end. You'd better hide that ticket somewhere Fort Knox couldn't crack, especially from those vultures. I laughed. Oh, please, I've got it all under control. It's tucked away nice and safe. Fast forward a week, and I'm jetting off to a teaching conference, my mind a whirlwind of lectures and potential networking. Not once did I suspect what was brewing back home. Coming back to an empty space where my granddad's hefty safe used to sit, you'd think I'd freak out. But no, I just burst out laughing. Knowing Jack and his folks, I had a hunch about who the culprits were. Sure enough, as the sun dipped and the evening rolled in, Jack's frantic voice came blaring through my phone. "Kim, you need to fix this now," he was practically shrieking. "Fix what, Jack? The fact that you and your parents are a bunch of Keystone cops?" I couldn't help the snark. "It's not funny. We're at the police station. They think we tried to steal the lottery ticket." His voice was a mix of panic and disbelief. "The ticket? Oh, that precious piece of paper. Except, the real kicker? The one in the safe was a decoy, a copy I'd made just for kicks. The real deal was with me, secure in my purse." The image of them, huddled around my granddad's old safe, visions of dollar signs in their eyes, only to find a worthless piece of paper, was too good. I howled with laughter, the sound echoing off my empty walls. You mean to tell me you stole my safe for a fake ticket?" I managed between fits of laughter. There was silence, then a muffled curse. "You can't do this to us, Kim. It's not right." "Right? Jack, the moment you decided to break into my house and steal my stuff, you threw right out the window. Enjoy explaining that to the cops." The call ended with a click, and I spent the rest of the evening laughing, the sound bitter but liberating. Imagining their faces, the moment they realized they'd been played, was a balm to the months of turmoil they'd put me through. The next day, I headed to the police station to give my statement. The look on Jack and his folks' faces when I walked in was priceless. They looked like they'd seen a ghost, a mix of guilt and sheer panic. "Kim, thank God you're here. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding," Jack blurted out, his eyes darting around, looking for an ally in me. I just stared at him, letting the silence hang heavy for a moment. A misunderstanding? Is that what we're calling breaking and entering these days? His parents started in on their spiel, tripping over their words, trying to paint themselves as victims of circumstance. It would have been comical if it weren't so pathetic. "Listen, I only came here to make things right," I said, cutting through their babble. Jack perked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "So, you'll help us?" I nodded, reaching into my bag. "Yes, by giving this to the officers." I pulled out the real lottery ticket, the legitimate claim to my winnings, and handed it over to the police officer standing by. Jack and his parents gasped, their faces going from hopeful to horrified in a split second. "That's the real ticket. The one you all were so desperate to steal was a fake. A decoy," I stated, my voice steady and clear. The officer took the ticket, looking between it and me. "This will certainly help clear things up," he said, noting down something in his notebook. "But why? Why would you trick us like that?" Jack's mom wailed, looking every bit the part of a wronged party. "Why? Maybe because breaking into someone's house and stealing is wrong. You brought this on yourselves," I retorted, my patience wearing thin. Jack stood there, mouth agape, as the realization sank in. "So, what now? Are we going to jail?" "That's not for me to decide," I said, turning to leave. "But maybe next time, you'll think twice before betraying someone who trusted you." After the whole debacle with the fake lottery ticket and the stolen safe, things moved pretty quickly. The cops had enough to open a criminal case against Jack and his folks for breaking and entering, not to mention the attempted theft. It was a mess, but a part of me felt vindicated seeing them finally face some consequences for their actions. The divorce papers came through not long after. Signing them felt like lifting a massive weight off my shoulders. It was official, I was free from Jack and all the drama that came with him. And the best part? I got my granddad's safe back. It was a little worse for wear after its adventure, but having it back in my house felt like getting a piece of my soul returned. I had the winning ticket cashed, the money securely tucked away, and a whole lot of options in front of me. But first, I needed to celebrate this fresh start, this new beginning I fought hard for. I called up my sister, the first person who rode this crazy train with me from the get-go. "Hey, sis, how about a celebratory dinner? On me, of course, I offered, feeling lighter than I had in months. You kidding? I wouldn't miss it for the world. You deserve this, Kim, she replied, her voice bubbling with excitement. That evening, sitting in a cozy corner of our favorite restaurant, we toasted to new beginnings and the future. So, what's the first thing you're gonna do with your winnings? My sister asked, sipping on her wine. I thought about it for a moment. First, a vacation. Somewhere far, with lots of sun and no memories of the past few months. Then, I don't know, maybe start a charity, or invest in something meaningful. Something that makes a difference, you know? She nodded, her eyes sparkling. That sounds just like you, Kim. Always thinking of others. After dinner, walking back to my car, my sister looped her arm through mine. You know, I'm really proud of you, Kim. You handled everything with such grace. I smiled, a genuine smile that reached deep into my soul. Thanks, sis. Couldn't have done it without you. As I drove home, the streets bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights, I felt a sense of peace. The kind of peace that comes from closing a long, turbulent chapter of your life and stepping into a blank page, ready to start anew. I had plans to make, dreams to chase, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited about what the future held. Sure, the road ahead might have its share of bumps and turns, but I was ready. Ready to face them head on, with my head held high and my heart open to whatever comes next.